equipment in an old flivver, which usually refers to a beat-up Model T Ford, which we're lucky to have today here with this 1927. And so we're going to try and do that. We're going to do some real basic camping with some real minimum gear. So let's get started.
June, July, and August, and in September too. Old put on an old straw hat, and the nickels just like that. Time for a time in summertime. Summer, summer, oh summertime. Break up that curve we had, lock up that wall of flat. Summer, summer, oh summertime. Look at all those pretty faces. Oh, you think the summer's chasing. Summer, summer, oh summertime. June, July, and August, and in September too. Whoops, I hear it looks like rain. Officer, he's in again. Time for a time in summertime. Shoot, take moonlight rides, trolley trip. Loop and take your girl on over tip. Million silly things to do. I'm a kid and so are you. There's a reason, summer season, all aboard. Summer, summer, oh summertime. Have your fun while it lasts. All the good while it lasts. Summer, summer, oh summertime. Fella gave the day love foragers, his feeders in their clothes. Summer, summer, oh summertime. June, July, and August, and in September too. Turkey tracks and bunny hums, loving peas and kiss and songs. Time for a time in summertime. Summer, summer, oh summertime. Dill pickles, cakes, and cream. See what an awful dream. Summer, summer, oh summertime. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Suffragettes.
Here we are in southern Indiana, and this is home for tonight. So we're going to get started on setting up camp. So here we are. We've got camp pretty much set up. Got a few touches to do. We're getting ready to start making some food. We've got our fire going. What I did here is I took the cushions, the seat cushions, out of the Model T, and I used that for my bed. So you can see here, these are just the car seats. And we're going to give that a try. That was something that was done in the period, and it's mentioned in a lot of books, and we're going to see how well that sleeps tonight. It's a little narrow, but I think it'll work. And Drew is going to be trying out a hammock tonight, and we'll see how that goes. We both may end up just rolling up on the ground. We'll see how it goes. But we're going to get started on some food. Now, what we are doing here is we're going to do a 1 skillet meal. And I know you think, oh, you're just going to put a bunch of things in a skillet. No, we're actually going to make a full meal, but we're only going to use 1 skillet to do it. And I'll show you how that's going to work right now. All right, so making a whole meal with 1 skillet. This is how is described in the Long and Long motor camping book. And you start off making your coffee in the skillet. Now you might think, coffee at supper time? Yeah, that was actually really common. Coffee was a beverage for any time of the day in this period. And so we're going to have coffee with our supper tonight. Now, while that gets going, I'm going to show you how this is going to work. Now, everything that we brought with us is stuff that would have most likely come from home or would have been military surplus of the period, or would have maybe been some old gear that was cast off. What we're shooting for here is to try to do early 1930s. So we're in the middle of the Great Depression. There's not a lot going on. There's not a lot of money going around, not a lot of jobs. So people didn't have the money to buy expensive camping gear and go out and do these things. But it was still a great hobby and a great way to blow off some steam and have a good time. So people did it. They did it with what they had. And that's the great thing about camping, and that's mentioned in so many books from this period. They mention how camping is one of those things that just anybody can do it with anything they've got. So it might be you know, the rich fella with a Packard automobile and every piece of top-notch camping gear fresh out of the catalog, and then you had guys like us that really didn't have the money to buy camping gear, but we can make do in the woods. So here I brought this this set. This is a thermos set from 1910, so it's a little battered, but it still works. And so we're going to use these thermoses so that we didn't have to bring Ma's Good tea kettle out with us to make coffee, or a nice coffee pot. So what we'll do is we'll make our coffee in this skillet, and when the coffee's ready, we'll pour it off into the thermoses so that it stays hot. Then we'll go ahead and proceed with making the rest of the meal. So that's how you do that. Now, the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get started on our baked potatoes, because they're going to take some time. The rest of this won't take very long at all. And as everybody knows, when you do potatoes in a fire, you want to prick them so they don't blow up in your face, blow hot coals everywhere. It's bad news. So I don't really have enough ashes with this stick fire here to bury them in ashes like we normally would. But what I do have is I have this large rock that I set up against here, and it kind of is going to work like a reflector oven, and hopefully it'll bake these potatoes while everything else is cooking. It's kind of hot down there. So the purpose of this trip is just to go camping. It's just to have some fun, blow off steam, go camping. So we're not here hunting. You'll notice we don't have rifles with us, but we are packing pistols. And that became a lot more common from books and articles that I've read in the 1930s, in the Depression era, because there were more hobos and vagrants around, and there was a irrational fear of those people. There really isn't a whole lot of evidence of unemployed, homeless individuals being arrested for actual crimes. They were arrested for vagrancy, for begging, things like that, trespassing, but never, well, I wouldn't say never, but hardly ever for serious crimes. But because they were so common, these people were everywhere, and there was often a police presence associated with them because the police would tell them to move on, there became an association in the mindset of people in that time that these individuals are criminals or potentially dangerous people. And so early on in motor camping, some of the books even tell you there's no reason to carry a firearm. It's not necessary, you know, Knights of the Road, all that. Everybody's kind and friendly, and you're never going to get robbed. But that did happen sometimes. It wasn't very common, and nobody really worried about it. But with all the unrest and unemployment of the Great Depression, people became a lot more wary, and so you see more photographs in that period of people packing pistols, or you'll see recommendations in manuals from that later period that, you know, you should carry a sidearm, and oftentimes they'll say, you know, for the sake of wild animals, and a lot of the camping novels almost always has some crazy story about a mountain lion that attacks the camp, and they fight it off with whatever they've got, and that didn't happen either. There wasn't much of that kind of wildlife left, especially by the 30s. There just wasn't enough population to be that big of an issue, and the national forests, were hiring hunters to come in and eradicate mountain lions and wolves and things like that. At that time, that was thought to be the way to preserve game. They didn't realize that would counterbalance, and that you would have an overabundance of game, and therefore a bunch of issues associated with that, including the game animals such as elk and deer dying off because of diseases due to inbreeding and overpopulation, or starving because of lack of food. And this was because all those big predators were taken out. So the idea that you need a firearm when camping for wild animals in the 30s probably doesn't hold any water, and the idea that you need it for hobos and vagrants really doesn't hold water either. But they did it, or at least it is implied that writers thought you should, and so we use that as an excuse to put our pistols on our hips. Sometimes it's fun just to carry them around when you're in the woods. So deep inside, we're all little boys.
Where would one generally just get away at a trip like this? Like, how perceptive were landowners or free land, especially in the East?
Well, and that's an interesting thing. So in the early days of motor camping, there was a lot of just ask the farmer if you can camp, and set up a spot at the edge of the field or in the woodlot. And early on, a lot of farmers were thrilled because, for one thing, they got to see an automobile that some of them had never seen one before. And then as time went by, often the the situation was abused. And so there's a lot of stories about people chopping up split rail fences or wooden fences for firewood and things like that, that eventually there became a mentality that people camping on your land, strangers camping on your land, was a bad thing. And so it kind of went away to some extent. And certainly by the 1930s, when you've got hobos and vagrants and stuff like that, you never know what kind of person is camping on your property or why. You know, they aren't just out for entertainment. They're not just out camping or touring. Now they've got a beat up old automobile and they're moving around trying to find some kind of work. It's not the same crowd that it was before, and so a lot of places shut down. Even in towns that there were towns that had set up their own campgrounds in the middle of town to draw tourists in, because a lot of these tourists had money. They had big cars, fancy cars, new cars in periods when cars were brand new, and these were wealthier folks that had the money to travel. Now we're boiling. And so there were a lot of campgrounds set up where you could camp for free in the middle of towns, as a way of drawing in revenue for the town. And that went away entirely after Wall Street crashed. There was no more of that because towns did not want the migrant workers and the homeless poor coming into their town and setting up
shanty towns,
shanty towns and things like that. Yeah, so that all went away, and so getting permission to camp on somebody's farm was pretty hard by this point. All right, that's what we wanted. Now I'm gonna throw a little splash of water in there. Easier to do it from the canteen. So a splash of cold water to settle the ground some. Now let's see how badly I can burn myself. I don't know how much coffee we're gonna get.
I was gonna say, it's a very narrow opening.
It is. Should have brought a funnel. I'm not gonna try to hold it.
Hey, hang on. What about a fork stick?
Pretty good at that. Yeah, the fork stick is a great idea.
Every once in a while.
Go ahead and seal that one. It's not hot on the outside. I just don't want to accidentally run boiling coffee down my hand while I'm pouring. All right, can you stick it again?
Yep.
All right. Cool, we got 2 thermoses of coffee, and look, dump that out and there's most of the grounds right there. So
Very impressive, sir.
that worked out pretty well. Now, I know how well these thermoses work, so I feel confident we will still have hot coffee when it comes time for our supper. The idea in the book is that a skillet will fit under the seat, in that little space under the seat of the Model T, whereas a coffee pot won't. And so that was kind of the
That makes
idea
sense.
there. Using your space to the
As
max.
efficiently.
I went down to the grocer's and I got us a really nice slice of ham. So this was a bit of a splurge, but you know, even still, that was cheap food in the period. Ham and bacon. You know, nowadays bacon's a big deal, but you know, at that time, bacon was considered a poor food. Potatoes are a poor food. Beans are a poor food. So that's what we're eating.
And so things like your canned preserves, anything with sugars, imported fruits, like oranges and stuff would have been a super luxury.
Pretty much. I mean,
If not non-existent for the average.
it depended on, you know, your station in life. And if you're just like nowadays, you know, people do splurge at special occasions. You know, they may be poor, but if it's Christmas or it's, you know, some other holiday, or it's, you know, family vacation camping, maybe they've saved up, something like that, then you might have a situation where you know, they would splurge and buy some treats. But yes, sugar and things like that were definitely far more expensive for people who were just barely eking by. Now, ordinarily, coals are best to cook on. You don't really want high flame like this. To some extent, we're limited by the fact of our firewood being little sticks. It is what it is. But
that's also kind of dependent on like how long you stay, what you're
Sure.
planning on doing.
yeah, if we were going out for a week, we would have brought far more provisions. It would have been a much more thought out process, and we would have actually built a more permanent base camp. If you read the motor camping manuals and things, they'll tell you to dig a hole and bury your garbage. Obviously, we're not going to do that because it is 2023. But that's how they dealt with trash. We're not going to do that. We're going to take it back home with us. Historically, they would have brought dried beans and they would have soaked them beforehand. I decided to pre-soak these because I knew we weren't going to have time. So these are pre-soaked beans. But it makes more sense to carry dried beans and soak them.
But it wouldn't have been unheard of to put them in a jar with water if they knew they were going to be driving.
Right. If you want to soak them, you know, the night before, and you're traveling through, then you could put them in a jar like that with some water and soak them as you drive. You just got to make sure the jar doesn't get broken on the rough roads.
And again, being 1932, 31, 33, you're not just relying on candle or firelight.
Right.
They
Yeah,
didn't
we've
have
got
flashlights.
flashlights. That was quite common by then. And they were calling them flashlights. Early on, it was an electric torch. But by the 30s, it had definitely become a flashlight. Now we did one thing wrong. All the camping manuals suggest finding the place that you're going to camp by at least 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And that way you have time to set up your camp and get food cooked and get everything cleaned up before it gets dark. And as you can see, it's getting dark now, so we're not going to have that opportunity, but that's okay. We're having fun anyway. And we have electric flashlights.
Yeah, that makes a huge difference.
It really does.
And was, I guess, the logic for that just so you can just sit by and relax and take it easy the rest of the evening then?
Well, yeah, and so that you're not trying to do things when it's dark and more difficult to do those things.
Big different than like modern backpacking and stuff where because of flashlights you just do it whenever.
Right. Right. Nowadays, you know, everybody's got electric headlamps and stuff, and they don't even think twice about doing this stuff after dark. And here is our supper tonight, and it actually turned out just perfect. So we didn't even have to add any seasonings to our Great Northern White Beans. The ham and the wood smoke did it all. Didn't even need any salt. And then over here, our coffee is steaming hot. It's actually too hot to drink, even though we made it about an hour ago. So there we go. We haven't cracked into the potatoes yet. They might be a little hard in the center still, but that's kind of the way things go when you do potatoes this way. So that's our meal, and we are going to enjoy it. Well, good morning, folks. We're getting our day started here. Slept fairly well. We woke up a few times. I found that the cushions from the car seats were comfortable, but they're very narrow. And they also have had a lot of Armor All on them over the years. They are vinyl reproductions. So kind of slick. I didn't have any issues where I actually fell off of the seats, but I kept waking up and readjusting and felt like I was sliding a little bit. About 3:30 in the morning, my damaged old back really couldn't do too much more, and I got up, and then I ended up laying back down for a little bit, got a little more sleep, but it was more comfortable than sleeping on the ground, but not by much. So while I can say that sleeping on the car cushions is possible, it probably isn't for the faint of heart or anybody who is any wider than I am, which is not very wide. These cushions are real narrow. And it's awkward because when you lay on your back especially, your elbows are just kind of off in space, or they drop down all the way to the ground and you lay there like this. It's awkward. So, Drew, how was the hammock?
The hammock wasn't really bad. Definitely not for wider guys or guys with bad backs. You really have to make sure you get it level. I unfortunately had my feet lower than my head, so I found myself like pushing off against the ropes most of the night, trying to push up. The addition of the wool blanket I put in at the bottom, like inside the hammock, really made a difference to keep the cold, because I was afraid there was going to be a lot of draft and keeping the cold in, but it really wasn't too bad. Put a canvas tarp just over top of me just to keep the dew. It's kind of humid and muggy out. Again, we both woke up about 3 a.m. for various reasons. And at that point, instead of trying to fight back into the hammock, I just decided to throw the canvas down in a blanket and just here by the fire and tend the fire so we have a nice bed of coals for breakfast. But
Good deal. Well, that's two great examples of something that you can do that is historically accurate, that doesn't involve hauling much extra gear at all. Of course, we both brought our bedrolls, which is just blankets rolled up, and I had a canvas oilskin tarp to go over me. Drew has a canvas under and over bedroll cover thing. So I gotta get this coffee level. That's the hard thing about making coffee in a skillet, is you've got to make sure it's level. Anyway, the hammock rolls up into just a little tight ball, so it doesn't take up any room in the in your car per se. And of course, the car seats that I used are a part of the car, so they're always in your car regardless. And don't get me wrong, they were comfortable. Certainly better than sleeping on hard ground by far. But you know, I also have a couple of bad discs in my back, so I may be somewhat biased towards anything that is actually sleeping on the ground. So it is what it is. Your mileage may vary, but it was a fun experience, worth giving it a try. So we're still using the same gear that we came out here with. We're gonna use this skillet method again to make our breakfast. So we're starting off with the coffee. Actually, fun side note. So if you maybe remember when we made our supper last night, we filled 2 of these little thermos bottles. These are 1910 Thermos brand thermos bottles. They're dated March 15th, 1910 on the bottom. So we filled 2 of these, but we only ended up drinking 1 of them during supper last night, and the other one I put back in the container. Well, when we got up at 3:30 in the morning and we were both awake and we were sitting here talking for a little while, I said, "Hey, I wonder if that coffee is still hot." and we laughed at the idea of, you know, coffee sitting for 6 or 7 hours in a 110-year-old bottle. But I opened it up, poured it out, and it was steaming hot. It was like you had to let it cool. It was so hot. So that was really impressive. I was really, really impressed. I wish Thermos still made thermoses that good. So here is our refrigerator box, as they were called. Nowadays we'd call this a cooler. Sits on the running board. It is almost exactly the width of a Model T running board, and I used the Model T luggage rack to hold it in. This is tin sheet metal, galvanized, with a layer of asbestos in between. But it sure does a pretty good job of keeping things cold. So that's how we've been keeping things cool for our trip here, and it's worked out pretty well. It would probably work better if I put a block of ice in it instead of modern crushed ice, but I didn't. I forgot to make a block of ice for this, so is what it is. So we've made our coffee, cleaned out the skillet again. Now we're going to fry some bacon. I'm not going to worry about fancy slices. This is what I like to call scrambled bacon. And so what I did here is I took an old tin and I mixed up my pancake mix in here. Now we're not going to do pancakes exactly like what you'd think. Normally, you know, we would make a real light, fluffy pancake and put syrup on it and all that stuff. Well, hauling syrup, especially in a Model T, is not really the best idea. It's real easy to make everything sticky with that. So even the books often recommend that you take sugar or something like that. Or what we're going to do is we're going to actually use the pancake as the bread
for a breakfast sandwich. So it won't actually have much sweet to it at all, aside from the little bit that's in the batter. But that's recommended in one of the books. I can't remember now which one. So, so what I did was this pancake recipe is real simple. Doesn't take a lot to do. This is from a book published in 1917 called 1,000 Ways to Please a Husband. And it's got a lot of great recipes. The idea was for it to be a book that women could use if they didn't have a lot of kitchen skills. And it was a lot of you know, last minute guests, emergency situation, here's what you've got in the cupboard and what are you going to make with it. And this is one of those recipes where you know, you don't have milk, what are you going to make for supper? And she recommends these water batter pancakes. They do require an egg, but the rest of it is just basic flour and baking powder and a little bit of sugar, a little bit of salt, and some water. So what we did was we measured out all of our ingredients at home, and I put them all in the tin together so that that's my pancake mix. And I'll crack an egg into that and add enough water to make the batter that I want. And then we'll pour that in probably after we've cooked our bacon. I won't put it into all of the bacon grease. I'll pour some of that bacon grease off. But, so we'll add that in, and then we'll fry our eggs last. So hopefully it all works out. The only drawback that I see so far to trying to make your whole meal in one skillet is that it's a slow process of making the meal. You do each thing one thing at a time, and it takes a while. So if I had, you know, another skillet, then I could be making the pancakes and have them done by the time the bacon's done, and then fry eggs in both skillets, boom, you know, it's that much quicker. But now I would have 2 skillets to carry, 2 skillets to clean. So I see the advantage of the one skillet idea, plus the idea being that it will fit under the seat of the car, in that space under the seat where a coffee pot won't. And so that's the big thing, is you're leaving the coffee pot out of the equation. But if you're replacing it with another skillet, I guess that's still better. It's less height, and so it'll all shove under the seat. But I think, especially if it was more than 2 people, I would certainly want to take a second cooking tool, whether it's a skillet or a pot or something. Might do a short saucepan or something, just to have the ability to do something different, and that might actually work out better with the coffee even. So this is why we call it experimental archaeology. We try to find out what's going to work, what's not going to work. I'm basing this on suggestions in books that may or may not have been written by somebody who was actually trying what they were writing about. That happened a lot. So that's why it's fun to see, okay, will this actually work in reality? Will this work in practicality? And sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. And this has worked out, but I really think that it could be improved upon as far as regular use.
And you're just going to mix it in the tin.
In the tin, yep. Less dishes to worry about. I can actually, I'll just put the lid back on the tin and put it back in the box, and when we get home, I'll wash it. It calls for a cup of water in the recipe. I didn't bring any measuring devices, so I'm going to kind of guesstimate, and I'll add a little bit more as needed to get it the right consistency. But that's the only liquid ingredients that go in this, aside from, oh, some butter. We need some butter.
One stick.
Okay. The only thing I don't know is how I'm going to melt this butter, because it's supposed to, calls for melted butter.
Hang on. Since my blade is clean.
My blade's clean. I cut soap with it. Make sure it's clean, but yes. Alright, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put the butter in the lid of the tin, and I'm going to set it on one of these hot rocks here. So another, in retrospect, thought is next time I do this, I'll use a round tin.
The corners.
Well, it's just the octagonal shape is really awkward to try to stir anything up. It doesn't want to stir very well. It's not something I thought about. So I had to think about my process here and how I wanted to do this. Obviously, you do the coffee first because you don't want grease in your coffee and stuff like that. So when the pan's clean, you start the coffee. And then I needed grease to be able to cook some other things. So bacon had to be the next thing. I'm going to use the spare cup that we brought, pour off the grease in it. That way I can just put in as I need it. But then, you know, I thought about, well, you know, what also is okay to be eaten cold? You know, as far as should I do the pancake or should I do the egg? Because something's going to cool off. Well, you can eat cold bacon, and since we're using our pancake as bread for our sandwiches, as recommended in one of our books, you know, that can be cold, but cold eggs usually are the worst, so I figured we would cook the eggs last so the eggs are hot. Sometimes you just gotta put a little Camp Chef thought into it.
Yeah, that is the one thing with doing the one pan is you can only do
One thing
one
at a time.
pancake.
Yep.
One item, one pancake.
Yep. And again, we're gonna flip our when you start to see these bubbles coming up, and I'm gonna flip it so that the other side that didn't get as much heat is now going to get more heat. So you flip your pancake handle to outside, not side to side, because then you're just getting the same heat distribution. If you flip it, because your least amount of heat is going to be closest to your handle, and the most amount of heat is going to be farthest away from the handle. So if you flip it handle to forward, then you're getting both sides cooked evenly.
And I think the thing a lot of people misunderstand when they first get into like open fire cooking is that you have to have that big fire. But as you stated earlier, you want the coals.
Yeah, small fire is completely acceptable.
Been an hour and you haven't broken into the coffee. I'm impressed. Oh,
Is it good?
mm-hmm.
Mr. Coffee?
Thank you. And there's nothing special about the coffee either. It's just a regular grind.
Plain old,
Just-
yeah, dark roast.
hint of smokiness.
Yeah. is pre-ground. That was pre-ground packaged coffee was pretty common, especially by the 20s and certainly by the 30s. In fact, people were kind of getting away from any sort of grind your own coffee by that time. Processed foods were becoming the rage. And there's lots of variations on pancakes, or whatever you want to call them. They actually, they go by a lot of different names. I've seen flapjacks and slapjacks and logging cakes and things like that. And then hoe cakes are usually done with cornmeal. Johnny cakes are usually done with cornmeal, but it's the same concept. And so you can add this as an easy bread recipe to anything that you're cooking, regardless of what meal it is, what time of the day, or anything like that. Now, while your skillet is still hot, you want to throw a little water into the pan. That's probably not enough.
I was going to say cleaning water. Because I still got some of the soapy water over here.
But this does a great job of getting all the built up and burned grease bits out of your skillet. It won't get all of it, but it'll get a lot of it. Alright. This is awkward. I don't even know how to tackle this.
Mouth first.
Look at that. That's good looking.
And again, we didn't add any extra salt, no other seasonings, just the ingredients.
That's not bad just to eat. So here's our car, packed up and ready to go. Time to get back down the road. Here, I wanted to show how the cooler works, or the refrigerator box here, ice box. This is an expanding luggage rack that brackets down on the running board. You can see where the clamps are there. And then I put the tarp around the back side of it. Now what this does, it does two things. One, it adds another level of insulation to the box, but most importantly, it keeps the car from getting scratched and holes rubbed in it and things like that from the box vibrating down the road. Maybe not as important with a flivver like this, but certainly if it was a nicer car, we would want to take good care of it. And it's still an old car, so we still want to take care of it. And all of our gear is packed in the back seat, or the tonneau as it was called. And we are ready to hit the road.
but we didn't use any of that creosote. So again, it's gonna be pretty easy to apply. It's very pleasant. I really like the way it smells. Hello, welcome to Waypoint Survival. Today, I'm gonna show you how to make Horace KEPHART's bug dope recipe. Stay tuned. When Horace KEPHART was trekking through the woods, and especially in areas known today as the Great Smoky Mountain National Park, he was often plagued by mosquitoes and black flies, like many other woodsmen were. Now, in my last video where I showed you how to set up the 1920s Horace KEPHART tent, I had a lot of questions. People were talking about the fact that there was no floor. Another couple of people, at least, perhaps more than that, made a statement about, you're gonna get eaten alive by mosquitoes. And yes, that's true. They face the same problems we did today. Now, there were some tents that had some mosquito netting in it. They often called it mosquito bar. And there were things that you could carry as well as additional netting that would help you. But one of the things that all the woodsmen had and things they tried were different variations of chemical recipes that would help them be able to smear it on their body and keep those bugs and flies and gnats and all of that away from them. So this is his recipe. It's based on his 1910 writings. So his recipe was this, and pardon me for reading this, but I want to make sure and get this right. Horace KEPHART shared this formula in his book, Camping and Woodcraft. And what it did is it blended pine tar for its sticking power, citronella for its familiar scent, and pennyroyal oil, which was the secret potent weapon of the mountaineer. Together, these oils made a barrier that insects would not cross. According to his original recipe, which was put together by Dr. Edward Beck, it called for 3 ounces of pine tar, 2 ounces of castor oil or olive oil, 1 ounce of pennyroyal oil, 1 ounce of citronella oil, 1 ounce of creosote, which is made from a wood type tar, and 1 ounce of pulverized or powdered camphor. He also used carbonated Vaseline, enough to turn it into a paste so that it wouldn't just be a liquid. Of course, if it gets hot enough, it's going to flow pretty freely. Since KEPHART's recipe uses carbonated Vaseline as a base, it, again, as I said, is more of like a soft salve. However, reports from the field said that it was sticky and tarry enough to stay on your skin even when you were sweating very heavily. This recipe typically makes enough to fill a pint flask when all the ingredients are put together. So this is about 9 to 9 1/4 fluid ounces or 266 milliliters. What makes KEPHART's original recipe work so well was the bug repelling heavy hitters that it contained. Pennyroyal oil, which is a strong mosquito repellent, citronella oil, which is a classic insect deterrent and still used today. Creosote, this is wood tar, has a smoky scent which deters gnats and midges, and then the pine tar is sticky and aromatic and it discourages biting flies. The creosote in particular contributed to a persistent smoky odor that insects don't like. It's the same reason perhaps that they stay away from your campfire. When you have a smudge fire going, all that smoke drives away the insects. However, creosote, especially that made from coal tar, is now known to contain carcinogenic and irritating compounds and is somewhat toxic. Creosote is typically made from distilling tar from wood or coal. It's a dark and oily liquid. It's used historically as a wood preservative in medicines as well as an insect deterrent. Because of creosote's unfriendly properties, we're going to substitute citronella, tea tree oil, and clove oil. Tea tree oil plus clove oil plus citronella oil has actually a stronger repellency than KEPHART's original recipe, so it's going to work well for us. Here are our ingredients. We have the pine tar oil, castor oil, tea tree oil, pennyroyal oil, citronella, and then this is our camphor, and we used a block of camphor and just smashed it up, and then petroleum jelly. And this is the camphor gum block that we used. I just put it in a bag and smashed it up with a hammer to make a powder out of it. If you're familiar with camphophenique, which maybe your grandparents used, you're going to be very familiar with this smell. And last but not least, we have our clove oil. Now before we get started, I've got a small fire down here and I've let it burn down to just some coals, and I've got an old dedicated aluminum pan. This is an old Buckeye pan, and we're going to use this because once you put the pine tar and all the other ingredients in here, it's going to be really hard to clean up. So you want to use an old dedicated pan that you can use over and over, hopefully for the same thing, but definitely will work. The first ingredient we're going to put in here is the petroleum jelly. We want to heat it up and warm it up, and it calls for 2 ounces. So it takes 2 tablespoons to make 1 ounce. So there's 1. There's 2, 3, and 4. And then we put a little bit of extra in there if we want to make it a little stickier. This is to help it stay on the skin a little bit better. All right, so there we go. Next, we need to add 2 ounces of castor oil, which is 1/4 of a cup. All right, you can see that. Put that in there. And we also need 2 ounces of our pine tar oil. All right, again, another 2 ounces. There we go. It's a very dark liquid. Here's what our mixture looks like, and so we're going to take this and we're going to melt this together over this low heat, and you can also use a double boiler if you wish. We're just going to put it over this low heat here, and I would definitely recommend doing this in a ventilated area, and just be careful that you don't have too much heat, because again, this stuff is flammable. So for those of you who are a little concerned, use a double boiler, which is simply a pan of water with a can or a jar or a smaller pan set inside the water, so the water kind of helps keep it from getting too hot. Okay, we've got that to a really good and liquid consistency. We're going to remove it off of the fire. Just keep it close to the heat right here. And now we're going to add 1 ounce of tea tree oil, which is 2 tablespoons. 1, 2. We also need to add 1 ounce of the pennyroyal oil, and again, it's 2 tablespoons. And there's 1 and 2. Now 1 ounce of citronella oil, 1 and 2, and then another ounce of clove oil, and 2. Now we add 1/2 ounce of our camphor powder to the powdery consistency we're looking for. Some of it is still a little chunky, but this would just be 1 tablespoon. And now we go ahead and we stir all of these ingredients together. Especially want to pay attention to the chunks of camphor and make sure that those get really stirred in well and really broken up in the liquid if you don't use powdered camphor. All right, so we have pulled it off of the fire. It's still nice and warm and liquid, and we're going to be using our Coleman number 0 funnel here. It's got a screen in the bottom, and we're going to fill this small bottle up first, because this is something that we're going to use when we're actually camping. This is a little big. This is for storage. This is the one that we want to use. This is from 1920s, 1930s. This one is Goss, and it is dated 1916, as you can see. Whoops, I spilled a little bit of it there. All right, got that wiped up a little bit. It's going to keep bugs from landing on my board here. All right, now you want to do this before this gets too cool, because again, it is a liquid right now, but it's not going to be very long, and it's going to take on more of a paste-like consistency. So, all right, there we go. Got that nice and full. It's a little hard to do this without spilling it. A little bit back in here, and then wipe it clean with the rag. The rest of this is going to go in the big flask. It's already starting to congeal on me, so I have to help it a little bit here. Now, depending on how much of this you have, you may want to go ahead and take your finger and scoop up some of this, because as you can see, there's quite a little bit left in the pot, and we don't want to waste any of it. We already spilled a little bit. Kind of hard to do this and film it. All right, there we go. And you can see we've got a few particles left in the bottom from the camphor, but that's fine. This is meant for kerosene, so we can just easily rinse this out with a little kerosene. It's going to be just fine. Put the lid on it, and yeah, that works pretty good. Got quite a bit in there. It's about this much full, If we hadn't have used this, it would have been nearly full, so this is going to be great for storage. This is going to be great for putting in the pack when we go out camping. All right, so we've got it in our main flask, and this is called a non-breakable flask. And this is just a really cool item that I found at an antique store. But this is going to be perfect. And what's really neat about this is it says right here, it says to heat contents, remove cap, and then place on any hot surface. So this right here, you could place this on a stove or over some coals, on a rack, inside of a pan, and if this gets a little bit too hard for you to get out of that, you can just warm it back up. So this is ideal for this particular application. As far as using this, it's like a lot of things. It's for external application only. Do not ingest this under any circumstances. By the way, this video is for educational purposes only. And what we're going to do is we're going to put it face any exposed skin, definitely not in the eyes or the mucous membranes. But you're just going to take some and just going to start smearing it on. Now, a lot of people think that this would be like coal or something like that, but we didn't use any of that creosote. So again, it's going to be pretty easy to apply. Just keep it out of your nose. Of course, forehead. Make sure that if you sweat, it doesn't run into your eyes. And of course, neck, anything like that. And it doesn't take a whole lot. A little bit goes a really long way. Now, some folks may find this a little irritating to the skin, so try it on a little bit before you put it all over yourself and just go out into the woods. All right, so our little Winthrop bottle. Now, what's important about this is, again, if it gets too hard and it doesn't stay liquid, you want to have a hole big enough that you can stick your finger in. And I can get mine in all the way past this knuckle, so I can get down really far into this bottle and I can swirl it around and get some out and put it on my face. But like I said, we're going to save this for the trip, so when we go out and start doing our camping series. As far as the smell is concerned, it's very pleasant. I really like the way it smells. And it's not at all a horrible or hateful smell. It's very light, and it's a nice scent. It's kind of an outdoorsy, woodsy scent. And so, it's not super greasy, and I think it's going to work really well at keeping those bugs and insects off. Now, if you have people around that don't know what you've mixed together, make sure you mark it and label it clearly for external use only. That's really important. So basically, you just rub a small amount on your exposed skin. You would reapply every 2 to 3 hours or as needed. Now, a disclaimer, this concoction should not be used on children or pregnant women due to the essential oil concentration. And finally, here on my clipboard, you can take a screenshot of this. If you are looking for the ingredients, it also includes the milliliters for those of you who live in areas where that measurement is important. Well, I hope that you've enjoyed this video. Another foray into the past as we dig up and discover things that our ancestors did.
For the next 3 days and 2 nights, I'm going to be camping out in the wild with very limited gear, using a tiny survival kit that I put together myself in an ALTOIDS tin. I'll have to depend on the contents of this kit to make a fire, construct a shelter, get clean drinking water, and acquire food. We're going to be doing some fishing and some foraging, and I'm going to have to find ways to stay warm for the cold nights ahead, encountering some wildlife along the way, wanted and unwanted. So join me as I venture out into the wild and rugged foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. I'm not bringing any food, not bringing any water, so it's going to be whatever the land provides. Other than a little bit of rain, I don't think the weather's supposed to get too bad next couple days, which is unfortunate. Always makes things a little more interesting. It's a beautiful time of year. Everything's vibrant green. Bumpy road. A little bit of a drop off here. Starting to drizzle a little bit. If anybody lost a boot, here it is. Looks like I've I've come to the end of my road. Park right here. It's a chilly 56 degrees. I got my camera gear in this pack, camera tripod, walking stick, and this is my survival kit. And once I get out there, I'll show you what all I have in here. I'm gonna get hydrated before I go. Let's head out. So I'm just gonna follow this road for a little while, cut into the woods, and then hike a little farther. There's a little newt. They're loving this wet weather. Well, this looks like a good place to start walking in. Alright, so I'm going to show you what I have in my survival kit. I have this duct tape around it so it doesn't open. Plus I can use duct tape for all kinds of different things. Got all kinds of goodies in here. We have more duct tape, a utility blade here. This will be my knife, so I'll pull that down a little more. 2 sewing needles. The ends are magnetized so that I can use that as a compass if I ever need to. Put it on a leaf in some water, show me which way is north. I have some bank line here, which I can use for lots of different things. Some iodine tablets, all wrapped up in this plastic bag. And then here, I have a Mylar survival space blanket. I have it vacuum sealed so that it's more compact and fits in the tin better. A little fishing kit here. Fishing line, some hooks, some flies, some little split shots. And this is a Mylar bag that I use to store freeze-dried food. It's folded up, and this will be my water container. And next we have a ferrocerium rod for starting fires, utility blade as a striker, cotton pad soaked in wax for a fire starter, some more duct tape, and underneath of this duct tape we have some utility cord. All kinds of uses for that. That's all I have to survive for the next couple nights, other than the clothes on my back and the stuff I have in my camera bag. There we go. So in the camera bag, I have my drone controller, some work lights, battery pack, and this is also a light and a radio. More battery packs, case for my phone in case it starts raining, charging cables, headlamp. What else we got in here? Another headlamp, USB drives, and a trail camera, just to see what kind of creatures are lurking around at night, if any. And that's it. So, should be fun, should be interesting. I'm going to do some foraging on my way in here. For example, I might need bug repellent. There's a lot of it here, all around here. You might ask, what do I mean by that? This is yarrow. Crush this up, rub it on your skin and your clothes. Does a pretty good job of keeping the bugs away. So I'm going to gather a bunch of this. And it smells really good too. So you have the added benefit of smelling nice. Fresh, almost pine-like aroma. We got this pine tree here. Check this out. I will have absolutely no problem getting a fire started tonight. It's been injured. When the pine is injured, the tree will pump this resin to seal out any infections. And this resin happens to be highly flammable. It's good for cuts and scrapes too. If you get cut, you can rub this resin on it. It'll keep infections out. Kind of like liquid bandage. Well, this is old and dried up, but it'll still be flammable. Cool. Stocking up on supplies. Hey, look at that. The porcupine. Hello. What are you up to? Just hanging out. All right, I'll leave you alone. This is dogbane here. Old stalks from last year. This makes some of the best cordage from natural materials, at least around here. Very strong, stringy fibers. Peel off the outer layer, twist it into cordage. So that's good to know. If I need more cordage, I can come back and get this dogbane that's growing all through this field. Also watching for snakes as I go. There are some timber rattlers around here. Follow this trail for a little while, see where it takes me. Oh, here's the creek. I'm just going to keep walking upstream, see if I can find some good spots to fish for trout. Maybe do a little fishing. Wet a line, as they say. Tons of places to camp here, so that shouldn't be an issue. Finding a place to camp out for the night. I want to be close to the creek, so I have a water source and a food source close by. There's some birch bark. Makes good tinder. I like to gather this stuff when I find it, because where I'm headed, I might not find any birch bark or pines or whatever else I need. The smell here is just glorious. Fresh, woodsy aroma. Love being out here. Now this looks like a good trout hole. So that's some pretty deep water there. So this looks pretty good in here too. I have line, now I just need to find a rod. That looks good. I'll just trim this up. There we go. There's my fishing rod. Fairly flexible, shouldn't break. It's not like I'm catching huge muskie or anything. And I'll just tie my line on the end of it and get my fishing kit out of here. I don't have bait right now. I do have some flies in here though, which might catch me something. If not, I'm gonna have to look for some worms. Got some 4-pound test here. There'll be plenty for these trout. I'm not gonna need all this line, so I'll cut some. And I'll probably let out about 6 or 7 feet of line. And we'll try this woolly bugger. I'll add some weight to this. There we go. Let's do some fishing. Food is not a #1 priority, but I don't like to go hungry. And I need some energy. I haven't eaten in a while. Shelter, I can set up that pretty quickly. Anywhere around here, really. Plenty of water around me, so I'll be good to go. No bites so far. Might have to try some live bait. They don't want the woolly bugger, apparently. See if there's anything under this log. It's kind of hit or miss with woolly buggers. Sometimes I do good with them, sometimes I don't get a single bite. Small worm there. Oh, yeah. That's what we're looking for. We're good to go now. Good juicy worms. Took the woolly bugger off and I tied a hook on. Cover up as much of that hook as I can. I'm really hoping there's some trout in here that are hungry, like I am. Check it out. Woo. We're not going to go hungry tonight. Nice brook trout. I'm going to use this branch as a stringer. That's 1 trout so far. Cool. Let's see if we can catch some more. Apparently they want worms today, so that's what we're going to give them. Throw this on the hook, try again. Just casting it upstream, let it drift right into that deep. First cast with the worm, caught something. Now I'm not getting any bites. I try a different spot, upstream. The deep spot is kind of far out there. Might have to do some wading. I don't care if my pants get wet, just don't want my boots to fill up. Got one. Get him the short. Oh. Whew. Nice one. That's awesome. Another nice trout we're going to throw on the stringer. The fish are biting, and that's what we want. Lost my worm on that one too, so we're going to have to find a new worm. This sand feels a lot better on the feet. This one will work. So that is 3 trout. That should be enough for a meal tonight. Getting kind of late, so probably find a place to set up camp. I'm gonna have to dry my socks out over the fire later. Gotta get these trout cleaned up. So this is a job for the utility blade. Just gonna make a handle for this real quick so I don't cut myself. Should be good enough. Cut up the middle of it. I'm going to make a V cut under the gills and cut that connector piece and open it up. Everything should pull right out of it. Then we're left with the kidney, and then I'll just scrape it out of there and I'll give it a rinse. 1 cleaned trout. Now we'll do the rest. Starting to drizzle a little bit again. It's getting a little chilly out here. A little breezy, but it is nice. I'm not complaining. It's been real warm this spring. A little too warm some days. This is cinnamon fern. Some people confuse this with ostrich fern. You can eat ostrich fern fiddleheads. It's early in the spring when they first start growing. The only problem is I don't find too much ostrich fern around here. Ton of cinnamon fern, wood fern, bracken fern, not too much ostrich fern. So it's pretty steep on this side, so I got to cross over to that side. Just put these back on. Another newt. Oh, there's a bunch of them here. Oop, hey, there's another one. So I'm liking these big rocks over here. It just looks so inviting. Got this little stream right here, but over here looks really dry. So I'll set up my shelter real quick and gather some kindling and firewood. I can just make a lean-to shelter against this rock. And ground's fairly soft because all these hemlock needles on the ground. Hang these fish up for now. Grab some of this. Not very big, but I have to do. I mean, what I could do is just wrap myself in it. Or I could make a lean-to with it. Not sure if it's supposed to rain much tonight or not. These do reflect your body heat back towards you pretty well. So that'll keep me a little warm tonight. But they're not insulated, so it's not going to be real warm. So I'm going to use this as a tarp. This is going to be the roof of my shelter in case it does rain. So I'm going to make some grommets with this duct tape, some reinforced corners. This will be an attachment point for my line. Should be all I need. And I'll do the same thing at the other corner. I'll do 2 in the middle. One here and then one here. So now I need to attach these bottom corners. I'm going to make a tie out point on this corner. Another tie out point here. Now I'll give you the virtual tour. Here's the sleeping area. That's about it. $250,000 or best offer. Or maybe I'll rent it out. I haven't decided yet. It's a little rough around the edges, but nothing a little sweat equity can't fix. This is a prime piece of real estate. Look at all this beauty. Waterfront property. A little babbling brook flowing through the front yard. This hemlock kindling burns really good. I'll get some of the birch bark I gathered earlier and my pine resin. I need really good tinder because I have a very small ferrocerium rod to use and everything is soaking wet. Now, I do have this cotton soaked with wax, but I shouldn't need that, so I'm just going to save that for when I do need it. I just need something that's going to take the spark, turn it into a flame. So I'll just scrape tiny shavings of this birch bark. There we go. Ah, we almost had it. There we go. I'll put this chunk of resin on. We have fire. I'll let this flame die down a little bit and just cook them over the hot coals. Wish I had some seasoning. It's getting chilly out here. The skin will protect the meat from burning. I'm pretty excited to eat, not gonna lie. Even without any seasoning, that is good. Let's dig in, shall we? Good and smoky, a little charred on the outside, a few bones. After this, definitely going to need some water. So let's dip into our survival kit, get the Mylar bag and the iodine tabs. I cut some off so that it would fit into the tin better. Now I use a Mylar bag because in case I run out of water tablets, I can boil water in this. Just fill it up and drop some hot rocks in there. Now we wait. Get warmed up. So I put some rocks on the fire. I'm going to heat them up and they're going to go in my shelter with me. Keep me nice and warm. It's not real cold, but just a little chilly. And it's only going to get colder as the night goes on, so I add another one. Those rocks will retain heat for hours. Kind of splash that around to get the sides too. Yummy. It's not the best tasting iodine water, but it'll do. Well, it's getting late and I'm getting tired. I think I'm going to go to bed. These rocks are good and hot. I'll roll them into my shelter. Feels warmer in there already. This is not the most comfortable bed I've ever had, but the ground's pretty soft, so it's actually not bad. Those hot rocks are keeping my back nice and toasty. I'll see you guys tomorrow. All right, so I do want to get that out of here. I'm not a real big fan of these things. I heard something walking around out there. Not sure what it was. Morning. Got chilly. Well, it wasn't the best sleep of my night. It wasn't the best night of sleep in my life. Wasn't the worst. I'm gonna go for a little hike and get warmed up. That's what I'm gonna do. Let's get the blood flowing. Those hot rocks kept me warm for a while, till they cooled down toward morning. Maybe we'll do some foraging, a little more fishing. Reishi. Very medicinal mushroom. Anti-inflammatory. You can make a tincture with it. I might actually get that, take it home with me when I leave. So I definitely don't recommend the Altoids kit for cold weather. There's primitive ways to stay warm, but it's a lot of work. Just bring the proper gear. Found some wood nettle. You can see the tiny needles on it. It's just like stinging nettle, but a little different. Not as many stingers. When you cook these, it deactivates the stingers. Pinch the stems very carefully. I'm going to gather some of this. It's a very nutritious plant. I just grab the stem real tight and up, and usually don't get stung that way. But when it brushes up against the back of my hand, that doesn't feel too good. We'll cook some of this up later. I grab my fishing rod. We're going to do some more fishing. Let's see if I can find any more worms. Nothing here. Not seeing anything. There's got to be a worm under one of these rocks. There we go. Got him. And here's a shotgun shell. How about that? Now I can use this, put my worms in. Little acorn cap. There. So there's my worm container. Oh, I just came out to the road. This is the section of the creek that flows near the road. There's a nice deep hole here I can fish. Should be some trout in there. See what we can catch. Oh no, we got my worm. We got a worm thief on our hands. I'm gonna catch that one and cook them. It's all right, let's give them a big juicy worm. See how they like that. Got one. They wanted the juicy worm. Awesome. Beautiful. You little worm thief. Nice one too. Another brook trout. Hooked them good. Another good sized trout there. They seem to have stopped biting in this spot. We're going to move on. It's a deeper spot here. Over by those fallen trees. Nothing. Beaver chewings. Yeah, this is looking good here. Looking real good. Kind of fast moving, but there's some deep spots in there. I have a good feeling about this spot. We got one. This one's fighting hard. Another nice brook trout. I'm constantly having to check myself for ticks out here. These small ones are so hard to see. There's a little stream over there I want to gather some water from. These sharp rocks don't feel too good. Woo! This water's way colder. That is some good looking water. And let it stew. I'm going to try this spot again. This one's kind of small. I already have 3. I'm going to let that one go. Today's bounty. So I'm going to clean these up, take these back to camp, cook them up. Another night of not going hungry. That's always a good thing, because I like to eat. Hey, there's some more yarrow. Perfect, because I'm starting to get attacked by bugs. Wow, I almost forgot what color the sky was. And there's the sun. I haven't seen that in a while. It's been overcast for so long. Back to the campsite we go. So this time, to get a fire going, I'm going to use the cotton soaked with wax. Make my life a little easier, even though things are a lot more dry today. Birch bark I gathered earlier. Just going to expose those fibers and give that a spark. Should light right up. This isn't the best scraper in the world, but it does work. I'll put these rocks back on the fire. I'm going to need these rocks again tonight. It's going to get cold again. A nice piece of cherry wood I found over there from a fallen tree. And I'm going to do something a little different with this space blanket. I'm going to take this down. I'm going to dig a trench. Later on, I'm going to fill that up with hot rocks, put a little bit of dirt over top of it, and then put the space blanket on top of that. I don't think it's supposed to rain tonight, so I might not need it over me. It'll be a moisture barrier. So the hot rocks will make steam. Steam will come up from the ground and get me all wet if I don't have a barrier. Yeah, I'm just going to dig a trench here. A little easier said than done using a stick. Should be good. We'll fill that up with hot rocks later. I'm gonna make a little grill here. And stuff these trout with some nettle. And the rest of this I'll just put by the fire. I do love trout, but I could really go for a steak with onions, mushrooms, side of mashed potatoes with gravy, or even a burger. That sounds great too. Chicken Alfredo, lasagna, buttery pierogies. Then a nice dessert, like maybe some apple crisp with some ice cream. The hunger's getting to me. Once I eat this trout, I'll stop thinking about food. I hope. The trout are done. Good stuff. Sun's going down. It's getting chilly again. These rocks are hot enough, so glowing red. So we're going to roll them over to the bed. The bigger the rock, the longer it's going to retain heat. So this one will put off heat for a long time. Look at that rock. Red hot. Give that one a minute to cool down. Another thing you can do is bury hot coals in a similar way, but you'd have to bury them a lot deeper than you would rocks. That's for more extreme cold. Using rocks is safer. A couple inches of dirt on top, dirt and debris. See, that's steaming. Now before I lay on top of that, I'm going to let the rocks cool down some so I don't get scorched. Normally I would get an all-night fire going and then sleep close to that, but I don't have a saw to be able to cut logs big enough to have an all-night fire. Put big logs on, they'll burn for hours. It's heating up already. Oh, that is nice and warm. I feel like a baked potato. This is nice. Whew. Starting to get a little too warm. So this is why you want a moisture barrier. Look underneath of there, is soaked. Put this rain jacket on for extra moisture barrier. Well, I'm going to try and get some sleep. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Turned out to be a nice sunny morning. Ripped my space blanket last night. Still a little warm, so they're still putting out some heat. This papery birch bark can be hard to ignite with just a spark from a ferro rod. You take it, rub it in between your hands, crush it up. Makes fine pieces. Just going to warm up by the fire for a little bit. Got a little chilly, but rocks kept me fairly warm. Kept me real warm first half of the night. Well, the Altoids tin survival kit was a success, although I definitely don't recommend relying on it, especially not in cold weather. Get some of that. That's a nice one. Let's get out of here. Well, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Join me in my next one. We're going to start this off with one of the most useful things you're going to find in the woods, and that is pine sap. Well, technically it's called resin, but you can call it whatever you want to call it. Either way, it's very useful stuff and you can do all kinds of things with it. Pine trees release this anytime they experience an injury to seal off the wound from any infections. And you can harvest it yourself when it's fresh to use on your own cuts and scrapes for the same purpose. It has antibacterial properties, and since it's sticky, it can help stop bleeding as well. It's kind of like nature's liquid bandage and Neosporin. It also happens to be highly flammable, which makes it great for helping you to get fires going, especially in wet conditions because it'll burn even if it's wet. Here I found a large chunk of it that I'm going to place on top of this pile of dryer lint, which also makes great tinder. This large chunk of pine sap will burn long and hot and will do a good job of drying out these damp sticks that I'm placing on top. It makes great torches, which can be used as a portable light source at night or if you need to signal for help. It can be difficult to ignite pine resin with a ferrocerium rod. Finding an older, dry chunk of resin like this one and crushing it into a powder like I'm doing here with the back of my knife. And just start throwing sparks at it. It might take a little while to ignite it, but eventually it'll ignite. You can also use pine resin to make a temporary waterproof patch for tents, tarps, rubber boots, or rain jackets like this one. I have a small hole in this rain jacket, so I'm going to gather up some fresh pine resin. Just work it on there over the hole until it seals. and you might have to add a second clump to it. It'll work best when it's fresh. And this will create a waterproof patch. So I'm going to take this thing to the stream, fill it up, and see if it holds water. And it's looking good. No water leaking through. You can see the patch I made there. You can make portable fire starters that you can keep in your pack for future fire making by wrapping pine resin with cedar bark so that they won't stick to anything, and so that you can ignite it easier with sparks. After I've processed a strip of cedar bark into finer fibers, I'm going to put the pine resin inside and roll it up. Now you can light it with a lighter or give it some sparks from a ferro rod. This will burn pretty hot for about 5 or 6 minutes, depending on how much pine resin you use. These are great for helping you to start fires, especially in windy or wet conditions. Imagine wood that is soaked in oil or kerosene, and that is what fat wood burns like. It can be found in dead pine branches. The section of the dead branch that is closest to the trunk of the tree, known as pine knots, will be saturated with flammable pine resin. And if you don't have a saw with you, you can break off small branches with your foot or your hand, as close to the trunk of the tree as you can get. It's very easy to light. It'll burn for a long time, so it's really good for starting fires, and it's windproof. I have a stick of fat wood here that I'm going to dunk in this stream, just to demonstrate how it lights even when it's wet. To ignite it with a ferrocerium rod, you want to scrape very fine shavings off with the back of your knife or with a scraper. Then I'm going to slice off some slightly bigger shavings with my knife. And it lights right away. Great stuff. You can make long-lasting candles like the one I'm going to make with this fat wood branch that I harvested earlier. Make a split in the top about 1/3 of the way down or so. Keep it propped open with a twig. And then do the same thing in the opposite direction, crisscrossing the first split. And this is what it's going to look like, almost like a miniature Swedish torch. And then I'm going to take my Zippo lighter, a good wind-resistant alternative to the Bic lighter, and then I'm going to light my candle. Now you have a long-lasting, wind-proof candle for some light around the campsite, which also has a lovely, natural pine scent to it. You can make a larger version of this with a longer stick to use as a torch. This particular torch I made lasted me about an hour, so you're going to get a long burn time out of these. And if you need to put this out, find some water and dunk it. It'll burn while it's raining, but it won't burn underwater. Make a stealth fire, also known as the Dakota fire hole. Dig 2 holes next to each other and then connect them underground with a smaller hole. The fire is going to go in this hole, and as the fire burns, it's going to pull in fresh air from the air intake hole, which is best to be placed upwind of the fire hole. So I'm going to get a fire going in here, and once the fire gets going and gets nice and hot, it's going to burn very efficiently and put out very little smoke. This is a very good option if you want a fire but you don't want your location to be known, because as you can see, I'm walking up towards the fire, but I can't see it unless I'm right next to it. Just be sure to watch your step and don't fall into it. You could twist your ankle and burn your boot at the same time, and that's not good. It's also a very efficient way to cook food and heat up water compared to a normal fire. Think of it as kind of a rocket stove in the ground. And once you're ready to put the fire out, all you have to do is fill the hole back up with dirt. And you're good to go. It's almost like you were never there. A couple ways to modify your Bic lighter. Wrap it with duct tape. Besides its obvious uses, duct tape also happens to be very flammable. So now you have a fire starter and a lighter in one. I like to make kind of a hollowed tube out of it and give it a light. This will burn for a few minutes. It's also a good idea to pry off the child safety guard that's on the striker wheel. And this makes for much easier striking for if you ever lose dexterity in your fingers from the cold. One of the best natural tinders you're going to find in the wild is birch bark. The bark contains oil that makes it waterproof and highly flammable. I'm scraping fine shavings off the outer layer with my knife because I'm going to pair it with cattail fluff, which makes a great combination for if you ever have to start a fire with an empty lighter. The cattail fluff takes a very small spark, turns it into a flame, but it goes out really fast, so I need the fine shavings of birch bark to catch the flame and extend it. So I'm going to take my broken, empty Bic lighter, and all I'm going to do is give it a spark. Make sure the cattail seed heads are fluffed up really good so that they catch a spark more easily. And this can be added to your larger tinder bundle. If no other tinder is available, you can always use your sock. Take your knife and start shaving off the sock lint off of your sock, and it'll make a great tinder that will take a spark from your ferrocerium rod pretty easily. If you heat up a section of birch bark, it makes it easier to bend without breaking it. And I'm going to use this to make a makeshift water filter. This is a good way to filter heavy sediment out of your water. Bend your birch bark into a funnel and take a piece of clothing like this cotton t-shirt I have here. And I'm going to place this into the funnel. Now all this is going to do is filter out the sediment. It's not going to purify the water, which is why I'm letting this drip straight into my metal pot, because I'm going to have to boil the water afterwards anyways. And as you can see, this does a pretty good job of filtering out all that nasty sediment from the water, and it's almost crystal clear now. Like I said, you still have to boil this, and it is recommended to boil water for at least a minute, a good rolling boil. And you can see all the nasty mud and sediment that I filtered out of it. If you have long branches but no saw and you need smaller pieces, find two trees right next to each other and put your stick in between the two, use it as leverage, and pull straight back until the branch breaks. Now you have a big messy pile of logs. An easy way to transport them is to take off your belt, pile all the logs onto it, and strap them up. Now you have a log carrier, which actually works pretty well. Carry your logs with one hand and hold your pants up with the other. Cattail seed fluff is very compacted in the seed head, but if you break them open, they fluff up really good. You already seen me use this as tinder, but there's another use for it. If you're stuck out in the cold without the proper clothing on, you can use this as insulation. It acts just like goose down to keep you insulated from the cold. The more fluffy they are in your shirt, the better they're going to insulate you. Feeling nice and toasty. Say your lighter gets wet. When a lighter gets wet, needless to say, it's not going to light. So first thing you want to do is shake it a bunch of times as hard as you can, get all that water out of there, and then blow down into the top of it a few times to push out any remaining water. And then you want to remove the safety guard that sits on top of the striker wheel. Pry it off with something away from you because this thing can really shoot off of there. If you poke your eye out, you're going to have bigger problems. And then you want to take the lighter, hold it upside down, and roll it back and forth on your pants a bunch of times. You just want to keep doing this over and over again until the lighter is dry enough to work. Now there's another way to do this if you're worried about wearing down the lighter's ferrocerium rod. Take the lighter and dry out the striker wheel with your shirt, turning the wheel as you go, and then that'll dry it out pretty quick. All right, so now I'm gonna go tap my tree. I have a nice maple tree over here. It's pretty good size. Now, when you tap your maple tree, you wanna make sure it's at least 12 inches wide, which this one definitely is, so I don't have to worry about that. Some people say 10, but I like to err on the side of caution and just do 12 inches. You also want to tap on the south facing side of the tree where the sun hits the most, because apparently you get more sap if you do it that way. So this is the side that the sun hits mostly, is on this side. And when you tap your maple tree, you also want to go about 3 feet high off the ground. And right above a root, if you can. If you do those things, you'll get more sap. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go right above one of these roots here and kind of see where they go down into the ground. So I'm going to go right above that, maybe right here. That's looking like sun hits there a lot. So you can use a 5/16 drill bit to tap your tree or a 7/16 drill bit. Now, I like to use the 5/16 drill bit just because it's smaller, puts a smaller hole in the tree, doesn't hurt the tree as much. You know, I'm not looking to get a whole ton of sap. I'm just making a little bit of syrup. If you want more sap, go with the bigger size. Go with the 7/16. It's going to give you probably a little more sap. I like trees, you know, I like them. I don't like to hurt the tree more than I have to. The trees are my friend. They're giving me tasty maple syrup. Least I could do is just, you know, be easy on the thing. And look, I don't have the proper bucket either. I mean, this will be fine. This is fine. This is an old water container. It has this nice little handle on top. So that's like really convenient. Most people use hooks and they screw the hook into the tree. But, you know, like I said, I like to be nice to my trees and I don't like to poke all kinds of holes into my tree more than I have to. So I'm just going to use some rope and tie it around. Alright, so I'm going to drill my tap hole, and I'm going to drill it at a slight upward angle, just like that, so the sap flows downhill. So I didn't have to drill too deep to get a good sap flow. I'm going to get some of that dust out of there. Clear that sawdust out. As you can see, I'm starting to get a good sap flow out of there. So you can see on my drill bit I taped it off right here, and at the end of that tape is 1.5 inches. And I didn't even go that far into the tree. I went maybe 1.25 inches. Right here, I'm going to cut into this. Might tap that spile in there just a little bit. Make sure I got a good seal and I'm not losing any sap. You don't want to tap it in too hard at all, just very lightly. You don't want to slam it home. So it's looking good. That'll be filled up in no time. Now I could have probably, well, I would have been safe to add another tap to this tree, but I'm just going to leave it alone. Now when you want to tap your trees is when your temperatures during the daytime get above freezing, and then at nighttime it drops below freezing. That's when the sap starts flowing in the trees. So that's when you want to tap them. That's why people usually tap their trees February to March. So I'm going to leave this on here, check it tomorrow, see how much sap I got. Thanks for watching.
PEMMICAN is the original and, in my opinion, still the absolute best power bar. It is calorie dense and packed with everything your body needs for sustained activity. In North America, PEMMICAN has a long history of fueling voyages and exploration across the country. And because it's so good at doing that, it became a major trade item during the fur trade era. Now, I've shown how to make PEMMICAN with modern equipment, and if you're interested in that, I'm going to give you a link in the video description. But in this video, I wanted to take a step back to its origins and make a batch with what they would have had back then, back before dehydrators and food processors. The recipe for PEMMICAN is very simple. It's just equal parts some sort of dried protein. So today we're going to be using venison. I've seen recipes where people have used fish in the past. Basically, it's whatever you have on hand. The key though is that it has to be very, very dry. The second part is rendered fat, and again, the key to this is that it has to be very dry if you want to keep this PEMMICAN for a long time. And then we're also going to be adding dried berries to this. The berries are optional. Historically, sometimes it would have been made with berries, sometimes not. It just depends on what they wanted to make or what they wanted to use the PEMMICAN for. To get this process started, we're going to dry venison just in the open air. Now, for this venison to dry properly, it needs to be sliced very thin as you can get it. Now, because the fat will never fully dry in the air like this, we need to make sure that we cut all of that stuff off. We're going to add the fat back in later in the process after it's rendered. People have been air drying meat just like this for thousands of years, and when the conditions are right, it works surprisingly fast and very, very well. So the optimal conditions for air drying meat are going to be warm, sunny day and low humidity. A little bit of breeze also helps a lot. If you're in colder climates or a more humid area, you might need to dry your meat over a fire or inside of a primitive smoker like we're doing here. So I've got this basket of meat here that's completely dry. I just left this in the sun well beyond the initial drying period, just out in the sun, and it gets like almost bone dry, and that is the consistency that you want for PEMMICAN. This is just a big piece of basalt that I found that was kind of naturally dished out, and then I just kind of refined it a little bit just by pecking at it, blowing the dust away and just continue to peck at it. But as you use these things, they just get more and more dished out, and some of the old ones, those big stones, are still out there, and they've been found with the mortar still in there, just sitting in there from 1,000 years ago. So we're going to take this this dried venison, and we'll just put it on our mortar and pestle and grind this stuff into a powder. The finer the better. When you're selecting meat to dry for PEMMICAN, you want to trim off all of the fat, because the fat doesn't dry out as much as it needs to. You need this meat to be completely dry, and the only way to do that is to trim off all of that fat. Sometimes you have pieces of like sinew and stuff in there like that, and you can just give that to the dogs. The second part is rendered fat. For this batch of pemmican, I'm going to be using bison tallow, and I'm going to start by cutting this fat into small cubes so that we can render it out. The type of fat you use will affect the texture of your pemmican. Some fats like beef and bison tallow, deer and elk fat, these are solid at room temperature and form a nice solid bar of pemmican that you can just wrap up and take with you on a trip. It's more like a modern power bar. On the other hand, fats from animals like bears, pigs, beaver, raccoons, stuff like that, those make lard, which are much softer and never really set up like those tallows. I could just take this and put it over the fire and just start slowly melting this fat out. But if you do it that way, it's a little bit more prone to burn and it'll stick to the bottom. And so what we're gonna do is take a little bit of water and put in this. Now, I said previously that one of the goals of rendering fat is to remove all the water. And so why are we adding water into it now? The water is going to help this fat render out without getting too hot. If you get it too hot and you get it to a point where it's smoking, it's not the end of the world, but it will definitely change the color and change the taste of the fat. So as this fat starts to liquefy and render, it's going to separate from the membrane and start to float on the surface of that water. So I'm just going to keep this fire going and keep this simmering and just add water as needed. That is looking really good. So as the fat heats, it's going to separate from that membrane, and after a few hours we can simply scrape out the membrane and let the fat cool to solidify. So we're also going to be adding berries to this batch of pemmican, and again, they also need to be very dry. So there's two common ways to dry berries. One way is to simply break the skin of the berries and lay them in the sun to dry. But even under optimal conditions, this can take a long time. For this patch of berries, it took upwards of 10 days to fully dry. So these cherries have been out here for, I don't know, probably 10 days or so. And they're nice and dry, probably as dry as they're gonna get. The other way to dry these berries is in some sort of a pot. If you're in a fully primitive situation, maybe you're working with a clay vessel, but today I'm gonna be using just a Dutch oven. So when this process is done, we're gonna end up with something that's kind of like a dehydrated, chunky cranberry sauce type of stuff, like a chunky fruit leather. All right, so I'm just gonna put this over the fire, pretty good ways above the fire. I don't wanna get this too hot. This fruit has a lot of sugar in it, and sugar will burn very easily. So I just wanna heat it nice and slowly just to drive some of that moisture off. So we've got all the different ingredients that's necessary to make our pemmican, and the fat that we rendered out is solidified in this pot. So I'm just gonna put this over the fire to liquefy this, and I'm gonna get it warm. I don't want it super hot, but just warm enough so that it's liquid. It's starting to get there, but not quite yet. All right, so our tallow is remelted. So we've got our meat pounded up. We've got a little bit of salt here in this container. Now salt, for pemmican, you don't have to have salt, but if you do, if you can get your hands on it, it's really gonna help to improve the flavor. I'm just gonna sprinkle in there, and you know, the amount of salt you use just depends on personal preference. I add some to start with, and then I kind of just fine tune it later on. The berries that you add, these things, if you get them dry, the shelf life on these is a long time. I've never actually maxed it out, but I know I have had dried fruit like this just out for well over a year, and it's perfectly fine. So I'm gonna go ahead and just dump these right in here. We got these little carpenter ants. Look at that little guy. He's carrying away a piece of meat that's bigger than he is. Give that a little stir. Now I'm just trying to saturate everything, and it'll actually soak up quite a bit of fat. So traditionally this stuff would have been stored in rawhide bags, rawhide containers. Intestines were sometimes used as containers, and so I've got a little rawhide envelope here that I've made, and I'll just pack this full and then fold it over, tie it up, and then we'll use some of the leftover fat here to seal around the edges and seal this completely off. So we'll just go ahead and dip the seams of this down in some of this fat that I have. And we'll just hang it up, let it cool, be ready to go. We'll just hang this here and let it cool. Come back to it a little later. So typically if I'm making pemmican for just my normal outdoor adventures, I'll wrap it up in just waxed butcher paper like this. And this is a block of pemmican that I made last year, and it's just been sitting around in our pantry, no refrigeration or anything. And so we'll just open this up and give it a taste and see what it tastes like. So that's normal. That's what my pemmican normally looks like. So this pemmican was made with bison tallow, venison, dried blueberries, and then also when I make it at home, I like to add honey to it. It just makes it a lot better, and I like to eat it just like as a power bar. Smells just fine. The dogs seem to like it. But this has been sitting around, like I said, with no refrigeration, and it's not vacuum sealed or anything. It's just did a really good job of rendering out the fat, making sure all the moisture's out of everything, and it's perfectly fine. All right, so our primitive batch of pemmican should be cool, so we'll just go ahead and open that up and give it a taste. So this little rawhide pack is all sealed up with the fat that was left over, and it's all cooled, and it's very solid right now. And if you have a cool, dry place to keep this, it'll keep just like this for a very long time. So we'll just open this up. And that right there, I'm not sure how many calories would be in that. Maybe 600 calories or something like that. But a lot of times, that's all I'll eat all day long is a piece of pemmican that big, and it keeps me going. So this stuff is a lot more bland than the pemmican that I normally make. Normally I'll make it with freeze-dried blueberries, and I like to add honey, which really improves the flavor. And it's okay, you know, if you just wanted to sit here and eat it like this, it's okay, especially if you're hungry. But the way that this would have mostly been used historically is simply to just take a piece like this, break it off, and throw it into a pot with whatever else you might have foraged that day. Maybe it was some wild mushrooms, some other wild game that you harvested, or whatever. And the best part about a primitive container like this, rawhide especially, is you can eat the container when you're done with it. You get done with all your pemmican, slice this up into strips and throw it into a pot, slow cook it. Hide scrapings historically would have been stored, like when Native Americans would tan bison hides and thin those hides, they would scrape those hides to thin them, and all of those scrapings would have been collected and stored for use later in the year, and those things are full of collagen. No. Okay. No, I don't want that. He's drooling. Stay. Stay. Nah. Stay. 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 Okay. There you have it.
This is my backyard. This is a giant rain tank in my backyard. And this is my water bill. This is a drought map of America. I live in this red blob in Texas here. Despite my drought conditions, I have managed to grow a food forest in both my front and backyard. Unlike most of my neighbors' yards, which are relatively lifeless. What might surprise you is that the thousands of gallons of water I used were all free and none of it came from a well or a water company. In this video, I'll show you how to build a system that turns a half-inch drizzle into a knee-deep drenching so that you can irrigate your yard and grow things without having to rely so heavily on wells or water bills. Several years ago, I committed to getting my house off-grid from a water standpoint. You might have seen that video already. My giant rainwater system connects to my plumbing and takes care of my indoor needs. But outdoor irrigation in this climate can easily require upwards of 5,000 gallons per month. It was impossible to meet this demand with a single rain tank. Then one day it occurred to me, all that water flowing down the gutter each time it rains, where does it go? A lot of people assume that stormwater winds up filtering into our aquifers or that it's used to supply cities with drinking water. Is that true though? To find out, I spoke to the people at our Public Works Department. It turns out the water in my street winds up here. This is the Almost Park Dam, and a meager 1/2 inch of rain in my part of town accumulates 2 feet of water at this dam wall. According to the people that manage San Antonio's stormwater, even just a 1/2 inch drizzle requires the floodwater to bypass into a giant underground engineering marvel we call the San Antonio River Tunnel. This is basically a giant siphon that was built in the 1990s to bypass the majority of runoff water from the north side of town to the south side. Otherwise, the downtown portion of the San Antonio Riverwalk floods even in a modest rain event. After seeing this extremely impressive structure and talking with the incredible team of people that maintain it, 2 things were very clear. First, none of this water is used as a municipal water source. And second, when it rains in my part of town, anything more than a 1/2 inch of rain is intentionally ejected from our city. From there, it's sent over to the Gulf of Mexico. So we are basically managing this water as a waste product. But what happens to the water on its way to the ocean? To find out, I reached out to the San Antonio River Authority. This is Sean Donovan, Manager of Environmental Sciences. He's been with the River Authority since 2012, and it's part of his job to ponder the same things I'm pondering in this video.
A lot of people don't know that the San Antonio River is not just the Riverwalk. It doesn't end where the shops and the restaurants end. It continues for 240 miles downstream to the coast. So that water is going all the way downstream to the Guadalupe River and then eventually to San Antonio Bay. And as far as the water use, the San Antonio River does not have a lot of consumptive water uses south of town. The system that we have now is very heavily dependent on what's called effluent or discharge water from wastewater treatment facilities. Historically, the flow in the San Antonio River was spring-fed. Because of the consumptive uses of the aquifer water, those springs are usually dry. So without that effluent or that treated wastewater from dischargers like SAWS or like the River Authority, there wouldn't be a river in times of drought.
To your best estimation then, when we get a couple inches of rain here in town, is that a resource downstream or is it a risk for flooding downstream?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So the San Antonio is just in the southeastern portion of an area called Flash Flood Alley. We get a little bit of rain and the river comes up really, really fast, then it goes down really, really fast. So a rain like that could cause really big problems for some of our downstream communities because the way that our infrastructure is designed is to capture water, run it off surfaces as quick as we can, put it into river systems or creek systems and move that water downstream. Obviously, it helps protect life and property here in downtown San Antonio, but it could have negative impacts to some downstream communities.
Thank you very much for taking the time. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
So apparently most days this river is almost all purified wastewater, and any rain in our city just leads to swells in the river that are sometimes dangerous. But what about aquifer recharge? Does this water contribute to that? To find out, I reached out to San Antonio Water System, or SAWS. SAWS is the local municipality providing water for 2 million residents in the San Antonio area. Turns out the main source of our water is the Edwards Aquifer. Water is pumped out of the aquifer with giant pumps like these. This particular pump pulls 13 million gallons a day, and it's just one of many. The Edwards Aquifer is refilled by water flowing into the ground north of town. You can see here the green contributing zone that collects and flows water toward the recharge zone. The recharge zone is where land formations in soil allow for the water to actually infiltrate back into the aquifer. Since the bulk of the recharge zone is north of city limits, this means the water flowing down my street can't refill the aquifer. So in summary, when my neighbors water their yard, they open a spigot. Most of the water they use is coming from the Edwards Aquifer. And when it rains, none of the water flowing down my street can recharge the aquifer. And that rain poses a risk to our city and people downstream. Hopefully by now you can see the case for using some of this rain as irrigation rather than sending it all to the ocean. But how? Our beloved little species has done an impressive job flatscaping our environment. While it's easier to build on flat ground, it does not allow for water to soak in. It may not sound that important, but let me demonstrate the effect that has on plants. This is Moundtown, and this is Pittsville. Both pots are identical and contain the same type of soil. The only real difference is the way the soil is shaped. Moundtown drains water away quickly. Pittsville holds the water and soaks it into the soil. Into each pot I planted the same type of seed. Then I watered each pot daily with 20 cc's of water. I ran this experiment for about 4 months. The soil shaped like a dome remained dry and the seeds never germinated. Pittsville, on the other hand, grew a lush little vine without much trouble. From this, it seems pretty obvious that the shape of your yard has a real impact on water retention and plant growth. So I decided to change the shape of my yard. This can be done in different ways, but the general idea is to dig a ditch that flows from the high point of your property to a safe exit at the low point. My property slopes downhill from the street to a drainage way behind my back fence. That means if I want to fill my yard with water, all I have to do is create an inlet at the street and gravity will pull the water all the way through down the slope. Another reason my yard is simple is that I don't have a neighbor at the low point of my property. Any excess water that flows out of my yard does not pose a flood risk to anyone. If you do have a neighbor at the low point of your property and you copy this, you will flood them. Not cool. So please engage with a landscaping expert if you have any doubts whatsoever on how water might flow through your property. With that disclaimer in mind, I'll show you 2 versions of this system. The first and simpler version only works for people whose yard slopes like mine. To start off, I dug a ditch through here. You can barely see it now, but that's because it works so well. On the right is how it looked the day I made it. Notice how much bigger the plants are just 3 years later. The key to an irrigation ditch is to add soaking pits along the path. Some of these pits are as big as 50 gallons or so. This ditch runs along the fence line because it was already a low point. Soaking pits near the fence line are also less likely to twist ankles. You should only slope the ditch about 1 inch every 20 feet or so. Remember, the goal is to retain water, so a shallow slope is better. Once you have a good ditch punctuated with soaking pits, you have to fill it with rainwater. For a downsloping yard like mine, this can be as simple as cutting the sidewalk and cementing in a 4-inch pipe. This pipe slopes downhill into my irrigation ditch, and then gravity does all the work pulling the water downhill through my entire yard to ultimately spill out of the back of my property. Now let's build one that works for any yard with any slope. This next version takes water from the street, routes it into a sump on the other end of the sidewalk, and then pumps it uphill. From there you can have it flow back downhill and soak in anywhere you want. This makes for a much more versatile system that will work for almost any home out there. To start this job, I hired a contractor that is licensed with the city to demolish and rebuild sidewalks. It's the only part of the job I paid someone else to do, but rules are rules and I didn't want to break them. To ensure a flow rate sufficient to keep up with my sump pump, I chose 4-inch PVC pipes and I used 2 of them. I made sure my contractor understood these pipes need to slope downhill about 2 inches into my yard, and then I stayed out of his way as he embedded these pipes into the new sidewalk. Make sure the PVC pipes stick out a bit on either edge of the sidewalk. The ends pointing into my yard are duct taped shut to keep them from clogging with dirt. Eventually, I put 4-inch flexible couplings on those ends. I used a multi-tool saw to trim down the street ends so that if a car hits the curb, it doesn't crack the PVC pipes. Then it was time to dig a trench that slopes downhill into my yard. Here you can see me attaching the flexible couplings to the sidewalk pipes. Then I added some 4-inch extension pipes. Ultimately, I added a 4-inch gate valve to each pipe so I could shut the pipes if necessary. You can see that every segment of pipe maintains a downhill slope toward the sump I'm about to build in my yard. I spent 3 years gathering footage for this video, and while I was forming it, it was forming me. It changed the way I see our constructed environment. Now every gutter and drainage way looks a bit like a leaky faucet to me. I can't unsee it. Just because the practice is common does not guarantee it is logical. Any region or culture concerned with drought would benefit from really analyzing how we handle our rain from a first principles perspective. If this message speaks to you, please help me share it. Literally, please take the time to share this video with anyone you know that might find it interesting or anyone that loves their lawn. I do my best to make quality content with a helpful message rather than making frequent topical videos. And for me to continue prioritizing the message, I need your help sharing it. And if you really want to help, a click of the thumbs up and subscribe button are always appreciated. Rather than limit myself to the narrow dimensions of a 55-gallon drum, I decided to make my own sump wall out of this steel. It didn't need a floor and I wanted a removable roof. This sheet of steel probably cost me about $10. I rolled this sheet into a giant tube. I chose a diameter big enough to easily fit the PVC sidewalk pipes through the side wall, but also small enough to add a lid that you'll see later on. This big notch I'm about to cut is to allow the pipes to pass into the center of the sump. With the sump wall in place, it was time to backfill the pipe trench. This is a Harbor Freight sump pump that can move about 1.5 gallons per second. It's important to use a large pipe that allows for unrestricted flow. This is 2-inch PVC pipe. Then I hooked everything up just to make sure it can pump water. Let me explain how it all works. The rain comes from the street there, goes underground in the 2 big 4-inch PVC pipes. I got 2 gate valves here so I can close them if I want to. I'm holding them open with a magnet to a paracord so that they don't sag shut. This is a filter cage that I made for a previous project, and down there is a sump pump with a float switch. As the rainwater comes in and fills this, it raises up that float switch that activates the sump pump, and the water comes spewing out into the canal here that then feeds the entire garden. But for a number of reasons, it would be much nicer if I could have all these components down lower than the top of this kind of custom barrel that I made. That way I can put something like a tabletop across the top here. So I'm going to trim down the filter cage here, and I'm going to cut this pipe shorter so that the pipe passes through the side wall of the barrel, and then I'll put something on top here. This filter cage is intended to keep leaves and sticks out of the sump pump. I'm using it mostly because I already had it. Something as simple as hardware cloth rolled into a tube shape would probably work just fine too. This is an extra large PVC pipe cutter. It makes slightly crooked cuts, but it's a huge time saver. Link in description. Here I'm using an oil dripper that's also in the description to feed cutting oil right onto the teeth of my hole saw. When in doubt, I use fast-drying PVC glue. Patience isn't my strongest virtue. I left this PVC coupler unglued and held it in place with a screw so that I can technically take the system apart if I need to. I used 2-inch aluminum cam lock fittings to make this quickly accessible to hook up a huge 2-inch hose I'll show later on. Then I glued a long sweep elbow in place to make sure the water is directed down into my irrigation ditch. I drilled a hole in the back of the sump wall to pass the power cord through. This is a grommet to keep the cord from getting cut from pump vibrations. This is an old electric spool. It gives the sump a real frat house chic look. Then it was time to catch some rain. You can see here the brisk flow coming out of the pump. But notice the relatively minor flow entering the PVC pipes. That looked a bit suspicious that something wasn't working correctly. Here was the culprit. It turns out the dirt wall had eroded after several hours of rain and my irrigation canal was flooding back down into the sump. With the use of a trusty shovel, I dug more mud out of the soaking pit and reinforced the dirt wall around the steel sump. It has worked ever since without any trouble. Now all the water flows downhill through the irrigation canal to flood my front yard just like I intended. I've had friends express concern about breeding mosquitoes due to standing water. That has not been a problem whatsoever. Even a 50-gallon soaking pit is fully absorbed into the ground within a few hours. This doesn't give mosquitoes nearly enough time to develop. An added bonus is that the water that soaks into my yard is stored there and used by my plants during the dry months. Xeriscaping is a smart way to not consume water. This is a way to literally save water in the soil. To use this system in super light drizzles, you can add a sandbag to direct a slight flow of water under the sidewalk. Eventually, this accumulates enough water in the sump to turn the pump on and dump the water into your yard. And to those wondering how to do this without a canal right next to the street, this is how. With this system, you can hook up a flexible PVC hose using cam lock fittings. Then it's just a matter of putting the other end of the hose wherever you want the water. They make a fitting to attach a garden hose, but the small diameter destroys the flow rate, so it's not practical. With the big hose in place, the world becomes your water park. Please use responsibly, but enjoy yourself. And that is how to turn a drizzle into a drenching in a desert. I'm growing all sorts of plants that my neighbors still insist won't grow here. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to share it.
Hi everybody, my name is Max Maker and I wanted to give you an update about the driveway and how the flowers have grown in. But there's a major event that got into the way and that is flash flooding. Somehow on one day the entire street flooded and went all into our basement. So this video is about all the improvements I made to the house to stop this flood damage from ever happening again, so stay tuned for that. This is how it started. There was a major rainstorm and I was just casually filming when I suddenly noticed that there's a rush of water coming from the hill, rushing down the street and onto our property. So this was the big problem. Our house is 12 years old and it can handle any rain really well, but this was just too much and it wasn't even our rainwater. I've never seen something like this before. Shitty water comes over there. I tried to block it as best as I can, but it's just too much. Oh, just because of this stupid little area, we need to build some kind of dam here. This area is nice and dry, but over here, shit. It's just because this little area. Here the water flows down and then overflows and then here's a gully. There is a big drain here and a big one over there, but it's not enough. A lot of the water you just saw found its way into the house through the only basement window that we have. And I spent the night shoveling all this water into the basement pump from where it got pumped outside. I just installed this as an off chance I might use it last year, and I'm so lucky I did. So this is where the water came over. And this is, you just saw how high it was here. And here it's all downhill. It can just flow into the river, flow through the garden, I don't care. It can just free flow. It's just that it went over there and in there instead of going around. So we just have to divert the water and then we'll be fine. But at least the garden looks really, really nice. The next morning I continued with the cleanup, and now it was time to clean out all the water from the elevator shaft. So put a steel rod in there and the vacuum pulls out all the water, and from the vacuum it flows here into the sump pump. To get rid of these 900 liters of water, the pump took 13 minutes. This was filmed while the water was still rushing in, and this is the only basement window we have, and we need it for ventilation. We cannot just block it off. So we need to make sure water can't come through here again. Over there was the water. And this is pretty much ground level, so we need to make this higher. First I need to remove this. And I hope I can reach these screws in there. I had to climb inside. This is really claustrophobic. I hope I can exit from this side once I've got the screw loose. Don't think any of this is waterproof anyway. So we probably have to pull the concrete all the way to down here. This is not for standing water, this is just for flash water. It doesn't need to be perfectly waterproof, just so the big currents flow past. And oh, this is a nice perspective. So I went to the workshop and built this concrete form out of some old scraps that I had lying around, and then it was time to fill it up with concrete. I made sure there's some styrofoam here at the top in the inside, so we have a little ledge for the old grate so it can go back in there. And then we mixed up some concrete. The first mix was a little too wet, so we split it up into 2 buckets. And we made this mix super wet so it can flow into these cavities really nicely. If it's too dry, it wouldn't flow properly and it would just be a hassle. This way it's not as strong as it could be, but this is not really structural concrete anyway. It's really just to keep the main currents of water out of the basement. We vibrated the forms a little bit with just a hammer drill, and that really seemed to do the trick. I don't do a lot of concrete work, but this turned out really, really nicely. Apart from this defect right here, I just demolded it a little too early. It was still soft, but I couldn't wait. And the foam came out really easily, so I think the foam is a really great way to build these forms with. And the grate still fits, so I'm really happy with that. That is one part of the flood defenses done. On to the next one, and that is diverting the main water flow. So we need to build some kind of dam here, raise up this level a bit so the water can just flow around the building all the way to over here from where it's downhill again. I wasn't sure how high this dam has to be, so I took a laser level at night and just made some marks to where I think it would be appropriate. So this is about 20 centimeters higher than it was before. So I think we have a really good margin of error in there, especially since the last 12 years we didn't have this problem. This is the first time this happened. So my buddies and I, we removed all these pavers here, and it was a really easy work. This took about 10 minutes only, and we stacked them up, like this so they're easy to grab again, because we're gonna put them straight back down again. So we need to build a dam right here, and we want it to connect to the existing pavement, so the dam kinda has to be here in the middle. And we're using crushed concrete as an underlayment, so that's just recycled concrete, and we kinda modeled it so the dam would be in the middle. And for the sides, we still need some kind of border walls, so we're using steel again. Because I really like working with steel, and I think that's the only stuff that really goes well with the red bricks. Because this will get red eventually, and concrete borders, they would just be too prominent. It wouldn't be fitting, at least not for this house. We drilled some holes and then put some bolts in there, and these will act as anchors into the concrete, so you can't just pull this back out again. Then we mixed some concrete and poured it in there. This mix is definitely too wet. We're still learning here. It's quite difficult to judge how much water you need to put in there. It's always less. We installed 2 of these pieces of steel, and they are perfectly level to each other, and that gave us the highest point of the dam, so that's this line right here. So this new pavement has to gently slope upwards to the top and then gently slope downwards again, so we have nice transitions to the existing pavement. To make sure everything stays straight, I pulled some strings, dug these little channels, and then I concreted in the border walls. This time not with steel, but with bricks, and for that I had to mix some concrete. And this has to be quite a dry mix, so the bricks have good support and they don't just float away while the concrete is setting. So I just followed the red lines as guide marks and made sure that all of these bricks are just about touching the red lines. And that way everything is super nice and straight. Oftentimes I have to remove a brick, remove some more concrete underneath and put it back in. But overall it's pretty easy. You just have to do a few of them and then you get a hang of it. Did it on both sides and all the way to the ends. Just at the very end I had to do some cuts, and this was on a Sunday, so I can't make any noise on Sundays. And the next day was super rainy. So this was some heavy rain, but it wasn't really a thunderstorm rain. And you can see the water flows around the property, and then it's fine. It just changes the size of the road and then continues down the hill, and nobody is bothered by this. It just flows into the river. And the plan with the new dam is that it continues flowing around this corner and not getting onto our property. There is a risk that it could go through the flower bed, so we're also installing a dam made out of steel in there. And this will blend in really nicely because it's just the color of the wood chips anyway. And this is about 5 meters long and 30 centimeters high, so it's a super high wall. I don't think the water will ever go through here, and this won't rust away either. We concreted it in, filled it back up with the wood chips, and now we have a really nice barrier. And it's just controlling the flow of the water, really. We can't stop the water, we can't make this watertight, but as long as it rushes around the property, we will be fine. Another 2 days later, I started laying down these bricks, and it was still raining that day, but I wanted to get this finished, and my buddies only had time on that day, so we really pulled through in the rain. And here at the top, we had to make the mitre, so we marked this with some spray paint. We just put these straight edges down, and that gave us a really good mark on all of the bricks and where we had to cut them. So I just scored them with an angle grinder and then gave them a whack, and that broke them off very cleanly, and that's super easy to do. I didn't want to rent a big saw again like I did in January. And the mitre came out pretty well. As long as the angle on the bricks is always consistent, you cannot really get this wrong. These bricks are really forgiving. You can just wiggle them around a bit and it will look fine at the end. I had to wait a few days for the weather to clear up because this is a polymer sand that is water activated. So I torched all of the surfaces to get rid of any residual moisture, and then I could apply the sand. So this sand is mixed with some kind of glue, and once you wet the glue it gets sticky and that forms kind of a chewing gum like texture. So I just brushed everything in, made sure everything is topped up. And at this stage the bricks are really uneven. Some are sticking out more than the others, but we're changing that with the compactor. I got this from the hardware store and unloaded it with my little forklift. That's just an amazing tool to have. And then I compacted it for about 15 minutes, back and forth all the time, and that really nicely evened everything out. But I also had to fix some of the bricks that moved out of place. But I just pushed them back in and put some more sand in there. And after that I was done with that, I had to remove the residual sand from the top with a leaf blower. Because when you mist the polymer for the first time, it starts to harden, and if there's any polymer sand on top of the bricks, it will form a layer of sand on top, and it doesn't look right. I kept watering this about every 2 hours. So I had enough time to go back to the hardware store to return the compactor, and when I came back I watered it some more all the way to the evening. And this is how it looks like afterwards. It looks super nice, and here you can see how even these bricks are now. They're just one plane and it's really pleasant to walk over them. And I specifically wanted to use this polymer sand because it doesn't get washed away when it's raining. Because after all, this is a dam, so it has slopes on both sides. So while I was in the hardware store, I also got one of these bags of wood bark, and that looks nice, and it also prevents the weeds from growing. So now we have a fun little obstacle that also prevents the property from flooding. The pathway looks amazing now, and we had to redo this anyway because it wasn't that well built to begin with. But we're not done there yet with the flood defenses. All the water came in through this window, and behind the window there is kind of a volume there of water where the water can fill up, but if it doesn't drain fast enough, we added another pump to pump it back out. It looks like we're getting more and more of these extreme weather events, so I really want to prepare the house so something like this cannot happen again. And I cannot mitigate all the risk, but I think adding all these pumps and doing all these small measures will ultimately just lower the risk, so that's what I'm going for here. Another thing I noticed that evening is if the water comes in here before it can go around into the sump pump, which is behind this door, from where it gets pumped out automatically, so that is fine. And we have it here because this is where the main water line comes in. Before it goes in there, it will go into these storage areas and flood this whole area. And we really don't want that, so we need a way to get it from the window straight to down there. So I'm building this internal rain gutter that will be underneath the window. It's just some sheet metal, and then we have an adapter here to attach a hose to it, and the hose will go straight into the sump pump. And with every project I'm learning a little bit more about welding, and one of you guys recommended to get one of these glass cups, and it's much easier to see what you're welding. Doesn't look that great, but with the grinder you can just grind it off and it's waterproof, so this is good enough for me. I'm cutting off this stainless steel pipe with a pipe cutter, a really cool tool to have.
And of course I also need a hole in the side of the sheet metal, and I'm using these punches for that. I've got one of each size, and you need to drill a pilot hole, then feed this bolt through, and then you really cinch this down, and you need a big wrench for this, or even better an impact gun. So I'm using this big Metabo impact gun that I have, and this is really a lot of force required to cut this 2mm steel, but it barely does it, and you end up with a beautiful hole. And it's also not as dangerous as using a step drill bit, because, you know, this is a big hole, so drilling it with a hand drill is pretty hard. Then I welded this on, and here I had a problem. Some of the welds were really nice, but then in the next clip you see, it was almost like fireworks going on. I don't know what happened there, but I straight away drilled a hole into the steel. But I patched it back up. You just have to go slowly and work in increments. Make sure you don't totally melt through the steel. And after that I did a little bit of grinding, and I used some filler to fill everything up so it looks nice. It will be painted anyway, so it's nicer if you don't see my welds. And I wouldn't do structural welds yet. I'm doing just cosmetic stuff like this, but it's good practice and good fun. And to put this on the wall I had to use this little angle adapter for the drill. There wasn't enough space otherwise, and I'm going to caulk this up. So now all the water can just drain in there and go straight into the sump pump. So with that, the flood defenses are done, everything looks better than before, and it will be better than before. And here's the update about the driveway. This was why we're building it, and this is straight after we're finished building it, so in around March. And after that it grew in really nicely. The thyme here in the middle looks amazing. It bloomed very early and in stages. The plants were still really small, as you see here. I had to water it quite a bit, and that care really paid out. It looks absolutely beautiful, and I can't wait for next year when everything is blooming. This is the back of the garden back in February, and this is how it looks like now. Everything is grown over with grass, and it's really nice. So thanks for watching this rather unusual video, but
we think of medieval ovens as just for baking bread. But what if I told you one clay system could heat your home, cook 5 different ways, and produce all the soap your family needed? This wasn't just an oven, it was a complete household system that modern homes can't match. In this video, I'll teach you exactly how to build this system yourself with materials you can find today, plus the medieval soap-making process that turns ash into cleaning power. Medieval builders made a discovery that revolutionized household efficiency. Clay could store and release heat in controlled stages over several days. What started as a solution for bread baking evolved into something far more sophisticated. A thermal management system that solved multiple household needs simultaneously. These weren't wealthy luxuries. Village communities pooled resources to build shared ovens, but the real breakthrough came from understanding thermal physics through pure observation and experimentation. Medieval craftsmen noticed that different clays retained heat differently, that dome shapes distributed thermal stress better than flat surfaces, and that specific ratios of materials created structures that could withstand hundreds of heating cycles. This wasn't primitive technology. It was sophisticated engineering born from necessity, refined through generations, and perfected through scientific observation, all without modern instruments or industrial materials. 1. 5-stage heat management. Modern ovens operate on a simple principle: turn on, heat up, turn off, cool down. Medieval oven builders understood something we've forgotten. Thermal mass could be programmed to release heat in precise sequences, creating multiple cooking environments from a single firing. The sequence began with maximum heat, around 260 degrees Celsius, perfect for bread that needed intense reheat to develop proper crust. Medieval bakers could tell the temperature by throwing flour into the oven. If it browned in 10 seconds, the heat was perfect for bread. Too fast meant it was still too hot. Too slow meant they'd missed the window. As the temperature dropped to 200 degrees Celsius, the oven entered its roasting phase. Joints of meat, whole chickens, or vegetable gratins went in next. The falling heat created the perfect environment for slow roasting, Intense enough to brown the outside, gentle enough to cook through without drying out. Stage 3 occurred around 150 degrees Celsius, ideal for stews and casseroles that needed long, gentle cooking. Clay pots filled with beans, grains, and vegetables could simmer overnight in this retained heat, developing flavors impossible to achieve with quick modern cooking. The fourth stage, around 95 degrees Celsius, became a dehydration chamber. Fruits, herbs, vegetables, and grains were dried for preservation. Medieval families understood that removing moisture was the key to food storage, and this gentle, consistent heat created perfectly dried goods without the burning risk of higher temperatures. Finally, as heat dropped below 65 degrees Celsius, the oven became a warming chamber and food storage area. Bread stayed fresh longer, cooked foods remained warm for hours, and the residual heat could even incubate dairy cultures for cheese making. One pile of wood, 5 completely different cooking environments. While modern kitchens require separate appliances for baking, roasting, slow cooking, dehydrating, and warming, medieval families achieved all 5 functions through understanding thermal physics. 2. Building your clay oven, materials and foundation. Here's how you can build this system today using the same principles medieval craftsmen perfected. The materials are simple and available everywhere. Clay-rich soil from any construction site or riverbank, coarse sand, chopped straw or grass, and fire bricks for the base. Start with a circular foundation, a sab courtois, 80 centimeters in diameter using fire bricks laid flat. Medieval builders tested level using water. If it pooled anywhere, they adjusted the foundation until water spread evenly across the surface. This base receives bread and roasted foods directly, so it must be perfectly level and smooth. The clay mixture follows the ancient 3-to-1 ratio, 3 parts clay-rich soil to 1 part coarse sand with chopped straw added until the mixture feels right. Medieval builders mix this with their feet, the only way to achieve perfect consistency. You'll know it's ready when you can form a ball that holds together without cracking, but doesn't stick to your hands. Test batches first. Roll clay into balls and let them dry. Good mixture won't crack as it dries and will ring hollow when tapped. Poor mixture cracks badly or remains dense and heavy. Adjust your ratios and test again until you achieve the medieval standard. 3. Dome construction technique. The dome shape is pure physics in clay form. Create a sand form first. Pile damp sand into a dome 40 centimeters high over your brick base. This sand will be removed later, so pack it firmly, but don't worry about perfection. Cover the sand dome with your clay mixture in layers 10 to 15 centimeters thick. Too thin and the oven cracks under thermal stress. Too thick and it takes forever to heat up and wastes fuel. Medieval builders found this thickness through centuries of trial and refinement. The door opening is critical, 20 centimeters wide by 12 centimeters tall. Exactly 63% of the dome height. This ratio creates perfect air circulation for complete combustion and even heat distribution. Too large and heat escapes too quickly. Too small and the fire doesn't get enough oxygen. Work in sections, allowing each to firm up before adding the next layer. Medieval craftsmen understood that rushing construction led to structural failures. The clay needs time to set properly between layers. 4. Curing and testing your oven. Allow 3 to 4 days for initial drying before removing the sand through the door opening. The clay should feel firm but not completely dry, like leather. Remove sand gradually, supporting the dome as you work. Test doneness by sound. Tap the dome gently with your knuckles. A hollow ring means proper density and moisture content. A dull thud means still too wet. Wait longer. A sharp crack means too dry and possibly damaged. Check for visible cracks. Your first firing should be gentle. Small fires built gradually over several days to drive out remaining moisture. Rush this process and steam will crack your oven. Medieval builders understood that patience during curing determined the oven's lifespan. 5. The chemistry of ash-based soap. Now for the soap-making process that transforms your oven's waste into cleaning power. This chemistry works exactly as it did 1,000 years ago, requiring only hardwood ash, rainwater, and animal fat. Collect only white ash from hardwood fires: oak, maple, beech, hickory. Softwood ash contains resins that interfere with soap making. Separate pure white ash from charcoal pieces and unburned materials. Only the white powder contains the potassium needed for lye. Safety warning: lye is caustic and will burn skin. Wear gloves and eye protection throughout this process. Boil 1 cup of ash in 3 cups of rainwater for exactly 30 minutes. Rainwater is essential. Hard water contains minerals that neutralize the lye. Strain the resulting liquid through cloth to remove ash particles. This clear liquid is your lye. Test lye strength using the medieval egg test. A fresh egg should float with just the tip visible above the surface. Too much egg showing means the lye is too strong. Dilute with more rainwater. Egg sinking means too weak. Boil longer to concentrate. If you're amazed by this level of chemical sophistication, hit that like button, because medieval households were running chemistry labs in their kitchens. Subscribe for more forgotten knowledge that makes modern life look wasteful. Which surprises you more, the thermal engineering or the chemical mastery? Let me know in the comments. Now, speaking of medieval chemistry expertise. 6. Saponification. Making medieval soap. Render animal fat slowly until pure and clean. Lard from pork, tallow from beef, or any animal fat. Strain through cloth to remove impurities that would spoil the soap. The fat should be warm but not hot. About body temperature. Mix equal parts warm fat and room temperature lye, stirring constantly with a wooden spoon. Never use metal tools. They react with lye. The mixture will gradually thicken as saponification occurs. The chemical transformation of fat into soap. Continue stirring until the mixture graces, leaving visible lines when you drag the spoon through it. This indicates complete saponification. Pour into wooden molds lined with cloth and leave undisturbed for 24 hours. The result is potassium-based soap. Softer than modern sodium-based bars, but equally effective for laundry dishes and personal hygiene. Medieval families produced months of cleaning supplies from 1 oven's worth of ash. 7. The complete integrated system. Here's how the entire system works together. 1 clay oven, 1 wood firing, 5 cooking functions, plus months of soap production from the waste ash. The thermal mass that cooks your food also heats your space. The ash that cleans your clothes comes from the same fire that bakes your bread. Compare this to modern households: separate oven, stovetop, slow cooker, dehydrator, dishwasher, washing machine, water heater, home heating system, all requiring different energy sources, different maintenance schedules, different replacement cycles, plus industrial soaps, detergents, and cleaning products manufactured in chemical plants, packaged in plastic, and shipped globally. You can build this medieval system in your backyard using local materials and achieve the same results with integrated thinking. They understood that true efficiency came not from labor-saving devices, but from designing systems that worked with natural processes rather than against them. The environmental implications are staggering. This system produces virtually no waste. Ashes become soap, thermal mass provides heating, and everything has multiple uses. Modern households generate tons of packaging waste, require constant energy inputs, and depend on supply chains spanning continents. We've gained convenience but lost resilience, efficiency, and the deep satisfaction that comes from understanding and controlling the systems that sustain us. This medieval technology offers a path back to that self-sufficiency. Medieval families achieved something we've lost: complete household self-sufficiency through elegant engineering. 1 clay system solved heating, cooking, and cleaning, what takes us dozens of appliances and industrial systems. They worked with thermal physics, not against it. They understood chemistry through hands-on experience, not textbooks. They designed for abundance through apparent limitation, creating systems that were more efficient, more sustainable, and more resilient than anything modern technology has produced. The most dangerous thing might be our modern arrogance, believing that complexity equals sophistication, that newer means better. Medieval households prospered through integrated thinking we've abandoned for convenient consumption. What fascinates you more, the thermal engineering or the chemical mastery? Drop a comment and let me know. If these forgotten techniques are changing how you see medieval innovation,
When they kick in your bedroom door and you put a load of buckshot in their chest, that will psychologically intimidate them and they shouldn't be breaking into your house. I am not and do not advocate that you shoot people. Then you're going to acquire a lawyer. I also am not and do not advocate that you die in your own home and be butchered by a bunch of savages. So that would be my guideline.
Let's talk about the best shotguns for home defense right now, 2025, and probably for the next couple of decades, to be honest. Let's address the elephant in the room. Shotguns, not the perfect solution for everyone. They recoil a lot. You need decent hand strength, you need dexterity, and you need skill to run them. They're low capacity, but here's the thing. Most home defense gunfights don't require a full magazine dump, statistically speaking or practically speaking, especially when you've just disintegrated a home intruder's head like a watermelon at a Gallagher show. R.I.P. Not the home intruder, Gallagher, of course. Love that guy. So yeah, I'll concede the AR-15 may be more practical. A handgun may be easier for most people to use, but the 12 gauge is still king when it comes to raw dog power, close range effectiveness, and giving you a little margin of error under stress thanks to shot spread.
It'll spread a nominal 1 yard from the target to about 15 or 16 yards, and it'll start to get slightly erratic based on what you got.
So if you're man enough, or maybe you just live in a state where ARs are banned and you want to arm yourself with a small cannon, or you want to do it for $200, you're in the right place. I'm James Reeves. I'm a self-defense use of force attorney, among other things. I've been writing for the Firearm blog for like 13 years, been doing this YouTube shit for like 10. You might have seen my video, by the way, on how juries are more likely to convict you if you use an AR-15 versus a shotgun in self-defense. And that's not just some hot take. That's based on a real Texas study involving mock juries. So if you want another huge plus in favor of shotguns for home defense, that's a big one of the biggest ones. It can save your ass in court if you have to burn down some dude who broke into your house. Among other things, I've also been running the Shotgun Burn Down series of videos for the past few years where I evaluate shotguns with a brutal 500-round high-heat stress test. Most of them don't survive. I've killed Kel-Tec KSGs, military-issued shotguns, about every Turkish shotgun I've laid hands on, but all the guns on this list survived, and that's why they're here. In this video, I'm going to walk you through 5 of the best shotguns for home defense. Pumps, semis, budget picks, premium choices. I'm not ranking them per se. I'm not telling you which one to buy, but if it's on this list, it's probably one of the 5 best. Before we jump in, let's talk about what is not on this list and why. First, the Remington 870. Remington's been passed around like a beach ball at a Creed concert, and the original New York plant in Ilion that was making shotguns for like 200 years shut down in 2024. These days, recommending an 870, it's like recommending a Jaguar. Sure, it might be great, or it might totally suck. It's just passed hands through so many owners. I just can't confidently say, hey, you need to get this shotgun, because I don't know what you're going to get. Next, magazine-fed shotguns, theoretically fine. But you're adding another point of failure to a platform that's known for simplicity and reliability. And unlike a tube-fed shotgun, remember, low capacity, you can kind of top off as you go, like Bud White from LA Confidential during the Victory Motel shootout. If you really, really, really want a mag-fed shotgun, that's fine. I've tested a few that have passed the burn down. The Mossberg 590RM as a pump, the Genesis 12 and the Molot Vepr 12. Those fantastic shotguns. They've all passed a 500-round burn down, although I would kind of steer you in the tube direction. All right, so now that we've pissed off Remington collectors, KSG fanboys, mag-fed shotgun guys, let's get into the shotguns that make the cut for the video. Number 5, again, no particular order. You guys already know that I got to say it in this video. I was going to say it, right? Mossberg Maverick 88. I can't go a month on TFB TV without mentioning this gun. I bought one for $200. It survived the most vicious Bonnie Blue, beat it up, beat it down I have ever seen on this channel. For those of you who don't know, I'm one of the owners of Neutral Ground Gun Company in New Orleans. Myself and 6 employees ran 500 rounds of mixed birdshot, buckshot, 3-inch steel magnums, slugs, everything without stopping. We were just shooting it, passing it off, reloading it, shooting it, passing it off. We broke all the accessories off the gun, including a sling secured by an original HK steel sling loop. It was brutal, but not one malfunction, 0 issues. I sent that exact same shotgun to InRange TV for a mud test. I don't even know where it is now. Hopefully beaten ass somewhere, maybe in an evidence locker or something. I don't know. So why is it on this list? Simple. It is the 20-piece chicken McNugget of the gun world. It's good and it's cheap. It's a Mossberg 500 with some corners cut. It's got a single action bar, 1-piece pump 4N, cheap finish, but it's made in Maverick County, Texas, and it has been since 1988. Maverick 88. If you get one, here's what I do. First, dose it up with some Krylon in your color of choice, especially if you live in a humid climate. After it cures, slap some 3M industrial Velcro on the side of the receiver and maybe the stock. I'll link the right stuff in the description. It's like a very specific size and strength of 3M Velcro that is perfect. It will not come off your shotgun, and it's just the right size. Why would you do that? Shotgun cards. These are soft nylon shell holders that stick to the side of your shotgun like a bandolier you can rip off and replace. Let me show you. Talking about these, forget about the hard plastic shell carriers, dead as disco. Shotgun cards, faster, cheaper, 0 gunsmithing. If you can use Scotch tape, you can rig up a shotgun for shotgun cards for like 20 bucks or less. I wish I could take credit for this idea, but I actually learned this trick from a guy who was a shotgun breacher in the GWAT, like 20 years ago or whatever. FYI, a 7-round shotgun card is just about the same size as an AR-15 magazine, so you can store them loaded in any AR pouch. It's the perfect length for the side of the receiver of the shotgun. As you see here, these are just brilliant. If you want to throw a little bit of money at it, then I guess add a sling, maybe a cheap flashlight and mount. I'll drop some Amazon links in the description for stuff I've actually used, and it's James Reeves approved. I don't think the Maverick 88 is the best buy in shotguns. I think it's the best practical buy in the world of personal defense firearms. 200 bucks. That's fantastic. A $200 handgun is going to suck bees. A $200 rifle, does it exist? I don't know, but for some reason, this $200 shotgun outperforms many $400, $500 shotguns I've tested. Number 4, usually the controversy slut, but this list is as serious as a fart in church, so I'm not going to throw any curveballs at you.
This particular gun is a Mossberg, and that would make sense. No one's retarded, so you kind of get that idea.
Actually, just for fun, I'll throw you a slight one. Mossberg 590 Beachmaster. This was a special edition shotgun built by Mossberg and Van Kamp in collaboration with yours truly. It took me like 2 years to put this project together. The shotgun was only available to TFB TV supporters on Subscribestar and Player. By the way, we don't take money for positive reviews. If you like what we do, you want to keep us independent, consider tossing us a few bucks each month. We do stuff like giveaways and access to limited edition products. The Beachmaster, one of a kind. It's a 590 marine coat finished exterior and interior, Magpul, frog skin beach furniture, a suite of Van Kamp upgrades, including the Van Kamp barrel system and all their buttons and levers, in an American flag beach chair bag, and optic ready. But regardless of the trim level, Beachmaster, retrograde, tactical, the bare bones, Mossberg 590, this belongs on the list. It may scientifically be the best shotgun, toughest shotgun ever made. The U.S. military first started issuing shotguns en masse with the Winchester 1897 during World War I. I've shot one. Even today, still kind of beats ass, even if it handles a little bit like a Bop It.
This gun, you don't have to go slow, just slow down when you cycle it, because that block, there's a lot of mass moving there and dropping and going back up. So cycle it straight back. Okay, push forward first and then back.
Oh, right. Shit, and okay. I just smashed my fucking thumb.
So that's another reason that they were not exactly...
By the Vietnam era, the military was sourcing shotguns from however they could get them. Remington, Ithaca, Stevens, whatever. There was no standard. They were just pumping them into the jungle. But they realized that shotguns were way too useful to not standardize moving forward. So they tested the Mossberg 500. It did well, but the military had some notes. Hey, we need to swap out some of these plastic parts, improve the durability, make a few tweaks. Mossberg listened, and that's how the 590 was born. The military torture tested the 590 with 3,000 rounds of buckshot. That sounds fake. I kill commercial grade shotguns with 500 rounds. So the idea that a shotgun went 6 times that distance, my shoulder dislocated just thinking about it right now. Mossberg has since gone nuts with the lineup. If you're worried about how your gun looks in a courtroom, the 590 Retrograde's a fantastic pick, I think. Wood furniture, classic profile, looks like your grandpappy owned it or something. If you want something more tactical, you've got the 590 Professional series, beveled edges, upgraded sights, and upgraded ergonomics, a better trigger, basically what you'd get if you handed a 590 to a custom shotgun gunsmith and told them, make this perfect. There's so many variations now that I'm probably going to have to do a whole separate video on like the 5 best Mossberg 500s. But honestly, you can't go wrong with any of them. If you want to pump, go with a Maverick or go with a 590. But what about semi-automatic shotguns? Pump action shotguns, maybe more reliable. I tend to prefer semis for home defense. They shoot faster. More importantly, they shoot softer, but I'm not super picky. So number 3, and yes, I know this is going to be 3 Mossbergs in a row. Sorry, but I can't think of another manufacturer that dominates a single segment of the firearm space like Mossberg does with shotguns. They're just running the board right now in the shotgun market, especially in the US. I'm going to give the number 3 slot to the Mossberg 940 and the Mossberg 990. I've already torture tested the new Mossberg 990. So far, so good. Haven't made a video about it yet, but we're going to go ahead and stick to the 940 for this video. So you had the 930. This was the prior iteration. Decent shotgun, but it had a fairly tight cleaning cycle to keep it running right. Not ideal for a home defense gun. So I kind of stayed away from the 930. The 940, though, big step forward. They overhauled the internals, and my 500 round burn down ran like a champ. Everything we fed it, buckshot, birdshot, slugs, magnums, whatever, it handled with ease. That said, I do have a couple complaints about it. The 940 has a few plastic components that shouldn't be plastic, in my opinion, on a duty grade shotgun. The polymer bolt release, for example, has been known to come loose. It did whenever I reviewed it. I think that there's already companies out there making aluminum ones, so that's not a big problem. There's also a plastic mag tube clamp that lets you mount M-LOK accessories, but that clamp loosened up on us during testing too. Did those issues cause any malfunctions? No. Did they kind of piss me off a little bit? Sure. But the 940 makes up for it with smart features and very competitive pricing. The coolest feature, the rear dovetail mount cut directly into the receiver that allows you to install a Holosun 407 or 507 red dot that will co-witness with the iron sights. Brilliant. And you won't find it on any other major shotgun platform as we sit here today. Props to Mossberg for that. Like the 590, the 940 comes in a dozen different flavors, so you can configure it however you want to configure it. Let's talk about its little brother, the 990, for just a second. Originally built for a classified European military contract, a unit that needed a more compact, modular, breaching shotgun. The issue with a lot of semi-automatic shotguns is that the recoil spring assemblies in the stock, they just moved everything forward to the pistol grip, meaning that the entire operation system is forward of the grip, so you can put whatever stock you want on it, which is really cool. Again, I only have like 500 or 600 rounds through a 990. It ran great at Thunder Ranch. We're going to release a video probably in the next few months on it. And so far, so good. So I would say you can go with the 940, or if you want to maybe wade into the 990 waters, either way, you've got a soft shooting, fast cycling, American-made semi-automatic shotgun you can trust, and they're competitively priced. I've actually seen new 940s between like $750 and $800 new in box. Number 2, you guys already know what it is, the Beretta A300, technically the A300 Ultima Patrol. Oversimplified, it's basically a more affordable American-made version of the legendary Beretta 1301 shotgun. Not exactly the same. It's actually different in quite a few ways, but it also punches in the same weight class for a lot less money. I find the ergonomics and the performance of the A300 to be outstanding. I really can't tell the difference between the 1301 and it. Out of the box, the gun's practically perfect. It's got no gimmicks, no fluffs. It's just ready to go. Throw a sling on that son of a bitch. 500 round burn down with the A300 twice. I did the burn down, my burn down, and it ran perfectly. And then I literally burned one down in 110 degree heat in Arizona desert with Matt Hott of SimTac Consulting, who, by the way, one of the best shotgun instructors in the country. Matt ran me through a one-on-one shotgun course with the A300. We throttled this thing with buckshot and it ran perfectly, and I felt fine afterwards. It's pretty soft shooting. I've got a couple videos on the A300. If you want the super deep dive, check out my full torture test or the desert shoot with Matt, or the down and dirty comparison. A lot of you are like, okay, what's the difference between the A300 and the 1301? One of my most favorite videos with one of my most favorite firearms of all time, with one of my most favorite dudes of all time. I tear it down with Ernest Langdon. We break down every single difference between the A300 and 1301. Look out for that video. The A300, hundreds of dollars cheaper than the 1301. Usually a little bit more than the 940, about a C note. That gives it a great price to performance value in semi-auto shotguns. Number one, the Benelli M4. The M4 top dog during GWAT. I've owned one. I've also owned the M2, Benelli M2. I've spent a ton of time with both. Phenomenal shotguns. And look, it doesn't matter that the next line is God's honest truth, but a lot of people are going to be mad at me for what I'm about to say. In my personal experience, which is pretty extensive with shotguns, the Benelli M4's reliability, weight, ergonomics, and shootability, distant second to the Beretta 1301. And dollar for dollar, I'm taking an A300 Patrol for $850 over a Benelli M4 any day of the week. Now, let me be clear. If you're looking for a semi-auto shotgun, the Mossberg 940 or the Beretta A300, they're going to give you the most bang for the buck, right? They're going to give most shooters everything they could possibly want. Get you 90% of the way there for like 50% of the price. They're reliable, they're affordable, they perform at a level that honestly punches way above their price. But if you're looking for the top dog, the absolute best, one of the best guns I've ever owned, this is it. The self-cleaning gas system in the 1301, basically invincible. If you check my breakdown video with Ernest Langdon, we show exactly how it works, how this gun differs from the A300. 1301, slightly different operating system, additional chrome lining that gives it a durability edge. And now we've got the Beretta 1301 Mod 2, even better. My favorite upgrade from the Gen 1 to the Mod 2, the Pro Lifter. It's a redesigned lifter gate that stays open when the gun goes empty, makes it way easier to load shells without pinched thumbs. So what that is, you can see the shell lifter just kind of collapsed. What that does is it keeps the lifter down while you load, and it makes the process much easier. You also don't get your thumb stuck, which is a problem I always have. I've lost count. How many rounds is that? The Mod 2 also comes with an improved trigger, updated furniture, integrated M-lock slots in the forend, so you don't need to bolt on extra shit like I've got here. For lights, I'm usually a Surefire guy, but the Streamlight, this TLRM series with a pressure pad, $160, a phenomenal setup that I've been using on this 1301. It's been the only Streamlight product that I've owned because it works great on the Gen 1 or the Gen 2 1301 shotguns. It's small. You can get a 1000 or a 500 lumen. This is the 500 lumen that's slightly smaller, but they're about the same price. Again, for everything I mentioned in this video, I try to remember to drop a link in the description if you want to run the exact same setup like this light. This shotgun has never quit on me. It's never failed on me, but I have killed 2 Boris fast fires with it. For shotgun optics, I recommend with going something a little bit more rugged. I think the Steiner MPS is like the gold standard, the mailbox. It's an enclosed emitter. That means snow, dust, or rain won't flood the optic, turn your reticle into a disco ball. I ran the MPS during my course with Matt. It was flawless. Aimpoint makes good stuff too. If you're running a 1301, I highly recommend this Airtus Crom mount. That's what I use here. I'm using it with a Holosun EPS, but you can use it with like an RMR or something. It sits lower. It provides a built-in rear aperture, as you can see here. It gives you true co-witnessing with the front sight. It's not cheap, but it's the most solid mounting option that I've found. I even worked the original sight mount loose on this 1301 during that initial torture test. Super solid, really love it. The 940, however, shines from a budget standpoint here because out of the box, it comes optic ready and it'll accept a built-in co-witnessing optic like Holosun 407 or 507. Great budget optic pairing because you could probably spend less on the optic than you do on the actual Crom mount here for the 1301 and have something that performs comparably. So again, if you're looking to save money, the 940 is a great option. Now that said, if you want the best of the best of the best, I think you're looking at it right here. I'd get a 1301 or a 1301 Mod 2 with this Crom mount and with the optic of your choice. I mean, you guys are looking at one of my most favorite guns of all time right here in my hot little hands. So that's the list. Whether you're into pumps, semi-autos, or you just want to spend $200 on a shotgun that refuses to die, These are the shotguns that I know. These are the shotguns I trust, that I've used. I've personally tested to actually work when it matters. Big thanks to Top Gun Supply, your online shooting sports.
They tried to kill my rock and roll. Just remember, I'm still here for you.